Lies.
Kris is the tip of the iceberg.
Abuse.
To MrBeast, who's under fire, the wildly popular YouTuber's production company is being sued by contestants on his new reality competition.
Scamming.
I had to talk him back on it. I was like, listen, we're not promoting gambling.
MrBeast has been on the internet for over a decade, becoming the first YouTube billionaire. But as time has gone on, he has become entrenched in more and more accusations of wrongdoing. The problem is, there is so much information to wade through, most don't know where to start. Which is why today I'll be providing a definitive breakdown of every single MrBeast controversy. Around 2017, MrBeast's channel was truly on the rise, raking in millions of new viewers and subscribers as his stunts became bigger and bigger. He was quickly becoming one of the most talked about YouTubers on the platform, as younger users flocked to his videos to see what ludicrous amounts of money he would give away next. Of course, with such an explosive rise to prominence, there would be some who wanted to take him down in any way they could. On May 24th, 2018, a journalist by the name of Taylor Lorenz wrote an article for The Atlantic titled, "YouTube's Biggest Philanthropist Has a History of Homophobic Comments." In it, she detailed Jimmy's semi-frequent use of the word gay as a derogatory term on Twitter, as well as other instances of him saying perceived homophobic slurs even just a year prior. Lorenz seemed to make the argument that MrBeast's family-friendly image was actually just a facade hiding a monster. On top of that, people also dug through his old uploads and discovered more questionable material. In a video titled, "I Sexually Identify as an Attack Helicopter," Jimmy and his longtime friend Kris Tyson riffed on the meme that was popular at the time of claiming one's gender to be a piece of military machinery.
I sexually identify as an attack helicopter. Ever since I was a boy, I dreamed of soaring over the oil fields, dropping hot, sticky loads on disgusting foreigners.
It's time to live my dream!
While most recognized these as edgy jokes that were being made by countless other teenagers of this era, others insisted that this was proof MrBeast was a homophobe and a transphobe. When asked for comment on Lorenz's article, Jimmy had this to say: "I'm not offensive toward anyone. I'm not offensive in the slightest bit in anything I do. I'm just going to ignore it. I don't think anyone cares about this stuff." The rising YouTube star then went through and wiped away all of the offending content from his social media accounts. However, this would not be the only evidence used to paint the MrBeast team as bigoted. In 2021, Kris Tyson's old tweets from around the same era as Jimmy's controversial posts began circulating as well. These statements included examples of alleged racism and transphobia, as well as several comments critical of the Islamic religion and even a video of Kris saying the N-word.
What? He said nigger back in like 2008 or 2009. It's going viral.
Kris would also quickly delete these tweets and post a twit-longer apology for what he said, claiming that he had, quote, "a lot of hate for himself at the time he wrote those statements." The internet as a whole soon forgot about the ordeal as the MrBeast team stopped commenting on it publicly and simply chose to move on. While this event is mostly forgotten about today, it does show one of the earliest examples of the MrBeast facade starting to tear. In the early days of the MrBeast channel, Jimmy was not exactly posting the high-effort spectacles he is known for today. Back then, he mainly stuck to voiceover commentary over Call of Duty footage. His main strategy for growth at the time was collaborating with other rising stars. On May 31st, 2014, he uploaded a video titled 5 YouTubers I Think Will Be Famous. While most of the channels Jimmy mentioned did not go on to achieve much notoriety, one name should stand out to modern-day listeners.
At number 2, I have Sneako, and if you've ever seen Sneako's videos, you realize that they're kind of addicting. Once you start watching them, it's kind of hard to stop.
Yes, just as Jimmy was on the rise, so too was the now infamous creator known as Sneako. The two were both making videos in the Call of Duty commentary genre, and thus became aware of each other very quickly. They interacted in comment sections and shared a friendly rivalry as they continually passed one another in subscribers. But this all changed when MrBeast's growth skyrocketed around 2018, launching him into a new stage of his career. But this was not the end of Jimmy and Sneako's relationship. Admiring Jimmy's success on YouTube, Sneako decided to join his team in order to learn more about how to make a name for himself on the platform. He appeared in a video uploaded in June 2018 titled, "I built a working car using only Legos." Despite his goal to use Jimmy's rapidly expanding audience to build his own fanbase though, this would be Sneako's one and only appearance on the MrBeast channel, as he quietly left not long afterward. The online commentator would go on to elaborate on the details of his exit a few years later in a video titled, "The Most Important Lesson I Learned Working for MrBeast." In it, he explained that he and Jimmy did not see eye to eye on the philosophy of video creation. While MrBeast wanted to study the algorithm to create the most viral videos possible, Sneako claimed he preferred to focus on only the things that interested him, even if they appealed to a smaller audience. But according to him, he had not left willingly, as he had been let go by the channel's management shortly after the Lego car video. Jimmy himself has not said much about Sneako in the years that followed. Seemingly, he would prefer to keep their two brands separate, as Sneako has become more and more infamous as the years have progressed. While this is not necessarily a controversy per se, there have been some who criticize Jimmy for ever interacting with Sneako at all, as even in the early videos he stated opinions on social and political topics that some found objectionable. But he would not be the only MrBeast team member to get fired, and others in his position would not go out so quietly. Matt Turner was an editor that MrBeast hired in the mid-2010s. He remained with the team for some time before parting ways with them a few years later. At the time, it seemed like it had been an amicable split. Matt would go on to post a video to his personal YouTube channel titled "Why I Quit Working for MrBeast," in which he had nothing but positive things to say about his experience editing for Jimmy. In fact, he had claimed that his employer had even paid his rent for the entirety of his time working for him. But it wouldn't be long until Matt's recollection of the job would change completely. In October of 2019, Matt posted a thread on Twitter detailing the reality of his time on the MrBeast channel, with a much different tone than he had when he spoke about it previously. "I'm not going to make a full video about my time editing for MrBeast, but I will say that was the most mentally draining time of my life. I was yelled at, bullied, called mentally retarded, and replaceable by MrBeast every day." Matt went on to allege that verbal abuse was a standard practice behind the scenes at the channel, and that he never received credit for any of his editing work. With Jimmy's squeaky clean reputation at the time, many people expressed skepticism to his claims due to a lack of receipts. These onlookers also pointed to Matt's older video praising Jimmy as another sign of his duplicitous nature. On top of that, they pointed out that a similar situation had happened a year prior with another former MrBeast editor by the name of Fly, who posted a now deleted video with his own accusations of verbal abuse behind the scenes. In that instance, Matt had responded by saying Fly's story did not match his own experiences working for Jimmy. In fact, Fly actually replied to Matt's 2019 call-out with support, doubling down on his claims of abuse and advising Matt to be careful about speaking up further. While Turner did post screenshots of text conversations between himself and someone who had allegedly had a bad experience working for MrBeast, he was unable to provide anything further. The internet as a whole was still very skeptical of the story, and this was only strengthened when Keemstar uploaded an episode of his show Drama Alert on October 9th. In this video, Jimmy claimed that not only was Matt lying about being abused, but that he had been paid $10,000 in severance upon leaving the channel. It's important to note that this episode of Drama Alert has since been removed from the internet for unknown reasons. After Keem's fluff piece, the opinion of the internet seemed to be fully in MrBeast's favor. Matt continued uploading videos to his personal YouTube channel, receiving dwindling views and a significant amount of dislikes. A year later, Matt posted a video reflecting on the whole affair, but this too would be poorly received as people accused Turner of downplaying his actions.
It wasn't a good decision, but kids make mistakes. I'm 21 now. I accept that whatever I do from here on out is myself. I did something as a kid. I just feel like there's some sort of plausible deniability there.
In the time since then, Matt has scrubbed every single one of his MrBeast videos from his channel, and the lack of documentation for the entire affair has left this story nothing more than a vague memory in the minds of most internet users. But in hindsight, it kind of foreshadowed a lot of what would happen next.
He's just trying to get attention, and it's sad, but now I know I can't trust people, especially people on the internet, because if my numbers are good, they're just gonna fabricate and lie and try to use me as a stepping stone, and it's honestly just pathetic.
A major part of MrBeast's appeal is his willingness to give away ludicrous amounts of money to his fan base in the name of spectacle. In fact, many have subscribed to Jimmy because of his frequent monetary giveaways. And as his channel grew, so did his ambitions. In June of 2020, MrBeast released a phone game called Finger on the App. As the name implies, the goal was for players to keep their digit on their phone screens for as long as possible without removing them. The app would keep track of every single player around the world, with the last man standing receiving a grand prize of $25,000. When the challenge started, over 1 million people across the globe all joined in to try to win the cash. As can be expected from such a high-profile event, there were a few troublemakers. One person created a robot to simulate a finger, while someone on Twitch changed their username in order to trick unsuspecting people streaming their gameplay into getting knocked out.
Hey Ziri, I appreciate the... Oh my god!
I don't know what that means.
Bruh. Are you f***ing kidding me?
But for the most part, things went smoothly as players were eliminated one by one. Eventually, after several days of playing, all but 4 of the contestants were out. MrBeast decided to reward their dedication by ending the contest early, giving the remaining players $20,000 each. Though it should be noted that this was $5,000 less than what was originally promised for the winner. Regardless of that, by all accounts, this experiment turned out to be a success, so MrBeast and his team got to work figuring out how they would top it. In March of 2021, Beast Games released a new mobile experience called Finger on the App 2, featuring the same rules as the previous game. This time around, though, the prize had been raised to a whopping $100,000. Once again, over 1 million people downloaded the app and got their fingers in position. But those who were expecting a smooth gameplay experience like the previous Finger on the App challenge were sorely disappointed. You see, if someone were to scroll through the user reviews for the application today, they would find a plethora of angry players who claim to have been unfairly eliminated due to the software's buggy nature. Almost immediately after the game started, tweets and videos were posted by people who had been dropped from the game for seemingly no reason, as their fingers had never left their phone screen. These angry players hurled accusations at MrBeast, saying he had released a substandard product in order to scam his fanbase. To his credit, Jimmy and his team were quick to respond to these criticisms, saying that they were looking into any potential glitches and offering other explanations as to why people may have been eliminated, such as connectivity issues or moisture affecting the touchscreen sensitivity. While this calmed things down a tad, the deluge of outrage was still ongoing. Perhaps this anger would have been less severe if it hadn't been for Finger on the App 2's forms of monetization. If a user wanted some extra breathing room, they could purchase additional lives from anywhere between $3 to $8. This only led to more people feeling as though they had been ripped off, as these lives disappeared frequently with very little explanation. Once again though, the Beast Games team were quick to do damage control, offering refunds to players who felt like they had unfairly lost lives they had purchased. Once again, there were still many angry customers, but this kept the situation from getting out of control. That being said, there was one other commonly occurring reason for players being eliminated that was harder to explain. What needs to be understood is that Finger on the App 2 was sponsored by the phone game Lords Mobile, and the way they went about advertising it seemed to irk a large number of users. Many people reported being knocked out by a pop-up ad interrupting their gameplay out of nowhere. Some people felt as though it was a deliberate attempt to eliminate a large number of players simultaneously. Jimmy's team flatly denied these accusations though, claiming that people were misinterpreting what was happening. According to them, the ads were only supposed to play after a contestant had already been knocked out. So these instances were actually just a matter of players not paying attention to their phone screens, losing all their lives, and then assuming the ad had been responsible. Eventually, despite all the hardships and complaints, a winner was decided for the challenge after just over 2 days of gameplay. While MrBeast's PR team managed to keep the anger felt by many players from spiraling into a full-blown outrage, the many bugs and glitches reported about Finger on the App 2 certainly tainted its reputation in the eyes of most internet users. As of now, there seems to be no plans for a Finger on the App 3, as Jimmy has moved on to more grandiose methods of making money from his fanbase. In 2021, the Netflix show Squid Game took the world by storm. The South Korean drama about poor people competing in a series of deadly challenges in order to pay off their debts captivated millions, making it the streaming service's most popular series of all time. With all the hype surrounding Squid Game, there were many on the outside looking in who wanted a piece of that pie, and one of those individuals was none other than MrBeast. On October 11th, Jimmy posted a TikTok claiming that if his post received 10 million likes, he would recreate Squid Game in real life. The video received nearly double that, with over 19 million people encouraging the YouTube celebrity to go through with his plan, and he quickly set to work turning it into a reality. Over the next few weeks, he would post occasional updates on how progress was going, until he finally revealed in November that he and his team had painstakingly and accurately recreated every single set from the show. Finally, on November 14th, Jimmy uploaded $456,000 Squid Game in real life, in which 456 contestants competed to win the prize money. And just like Netflix Squid Game, this video soon became MrBeast's most popular upload of all time. Not everyone was so thrilled about this project though. Many online began voicing their distaste for the upload, saying that Jimmy was just an out-of-touch rich person who completely missed the point of Squid Game. While the original show was a critique on capitalism, MrBeast embraced the premise without question. The premise itself was about people sacrificing their own mental and physical well-being for life-changing money, and his critics accused Jimmy of doing just that with his videos. MrBeast's fans fought back against this criticism, claiming they were simply reading too far into what was nothing more than a bit of fun. And even if what they were saying was true, it still ended with someone winning money, so the net result was a positive. It also helped that when Netflix produced their own real-life version of the challenge, they faced similar criticisms on top of allegations of onset injuries. For his part, Jimmy remained silent on the matter, seemingly happy enough with his hundreds of millions of views that he was able to ignore the outrage. In addition to his normal uploads on the MrBeast channel, Jimmy and the gang also conduct frequent charity work which they film and upload to an account called Beast Philanthropy. These videos have been largely enjoyed by the team's core audience and ignored by the rest of the internet population. However, when one of these philanthropy videos was uploaded to the main account, people took notice in a big way. On January 28, 2023, MrBeast posted a video titled 1,000 Blind People See for the First Time. In it, Jimmy found 1,000 people across the globe whose vision was impaired and paid for them to have a cataract surgery done. Not only that, but he also gave many of the participants additional cash donations, and even gifted one teenager a free Tesla. In addition, Jimmy explained how simple the procedure was, and stated his belief that it should be available to everyone who needs it. He also included a link in the description so people could donate and help more around the world to see. To many, this was seen as an incredibly generous act from a YouTube superstar, but not everybody felt that way. Shortly after the video was uploaded, an increasingly vocal subsection of Twitter began expressing their displeasure with what MrBeast had done. They accused Jimmy of exploiting the people who appeared in the video for content, believing that he had no actual desire to help anyone. Others pointed out that the money to pay for these procedures did not come directly out of Jimmy's own pockets, but instead from the Beast Philanthropy charity. They argued that this supposed act of generosity was nothing more than a thinly veiled tax write-off and publicity stunt. It probably goes without saying that this was the vocal minority. However, Jimmy decided to uncharacteristically weigh in on the backlash, stating in a tweet, "Twitter, rich people should help others with their money. Me, okay, I'll use my money to help people and I promise to give away all my money before I die. Every single penny. Twitter, MrBeast bad." This response caused further outrage from critics, but once again, the vast majority took his side and felt the criticisms were petty. It should be noted that Jimmy actually continued responding to people who were critical of the video after this. Apparently, something about this backlash had touched a nerve, causing him to break from his normal strategy of ignoring controversy until it died down. When people continued accusing him of profiting off his charity work, he jumped in to state that he had lost $1.5 million on videos the previous year. But to play the devil's advocate, he was losing money on a business that was growing in value to over $1 billion, but that's beyond the point. A couple of months later, in March of 2023, a video was uploaded to the Beast Philanthropy channel titled "Giving 20,000 Shoes to Kids in Africa." Although this was published to the normally overlooked charity channel, the fact that it came out so close to the other controversial MrBeast projects ignited another round of outrage. People on Twitter once again accused Jimmy of not really caring about the people he was helping, and instead exploiting them for views and profit. But just like before, this was a vocal minority, and most Twitter users praised Jimmy for his actions. This controversy would somehow be stirred up again a third time in May of 2023, when the MrBeast channel saw a new upload called 1,000 Deaf People Here for the first time. In it, Jimmy paid to have several hundred hearing-impaired people across the globe receive state-of-the-art hearing aids which would adapt to their specific needs. Just like the previous instances, this act of charity received a mixed reception. This time, though, the negative response was slightly different. Some deaf people accused Jimmy and his team of misrepresenting the reality of the situation, as hearing aids often aren't as effective as they seem in the video. They argued that the wearers usually take some time to fully adjust to the devices, which occasionally don't work at all. But as usual, these criticisms were dismissed by most, and Jimmy did not respond. In recent years, MrBeast has been expanding his brand well beyond just YouTube videos. With his projects only getting bigger and bigger, these ventures were envisioned as a way to fund otherwise unprofitable videos.
I just need to figure out how to make more money so I can fund all this stuff. And so that's kind of what got me started on doing this. And I'm just very passionate about food in general.
With him receiving well over 100 million views per upload, a sponsored message on his channel costs a seven-figure sum of money. And while most creators would be ecstatic with that, 3 years ago, MrBeast saw a bigger vision. You see, instead of getting a one-time payment of $1 million, if the top creator created an in-house brand to promote instead, he could scale it to be worth $200 million. And this concept was the inception of MrBeast Burger, as he premiered to his fan base at the end of 2020.
I opened up the world's first free restaurant. And if that wasn't enough, I also paid people to eat at my restaurant.
This business of a delivery-only fast food shop was a product of the pandemic, keeping people inside, and also allowed Jimmy to rapidly expand since he didn't have to worry about building out brick-and-mortar locations, but instead ghost kitchens in pre-existing restaurants that might have been struggling due to the global conditions. Jimmy went so far as to claim this was its primary goal and he wasn't concerned with profits at all.
The big driver was we really wanted to just help a lot of restaurants generate extra revenue. It's more to help other people. Like I haven't taken a single dollar out of it. We just reinvested all over there.
He even claimed it was an attempt to get people to try alternatives to conventional meat.
With Beast Burger, that's why I'm really trying to figure out how we can get more people eating something like Impossible Meat, or right now we're looking heavily into lab-grown meat and stuff like that.
Immediately, this simple concept was a massive hit, soon expanding so hundreds of millions had the ability to order Beast-style fries on their smartphone whenever they wanted. And less than 2 years later, he was opening up his first physical location with 10,000 in attendance. It was located inside the second largest mall in America, which still struggled to hold the sheer amount of people. The ensuing chaos resulted in some of the few instances of Jimmy losing his composure on camera.
After they take the photos, we move them out of here. Why are we allowing them to linger?
Yeah, I know. The only issue is the merch store is right there.
What, behind us?
No, right back where you were taking pictures.
Right there?
So we're gonna have to move the merch store.
Why is there a merch store? F the money. Who
Well, I'm
cares?
just saying, like,
get rid of it. Give it to them for free. I don't care. Just move those barriers. Move this back. Literally, just make that happen. I promise this will flow 30 times better.
Okay.
Am I speaking gibberish?
In the midst of all this, he invited fellow creator Tommy Innit backstage in hopes of filming an ad for his product. Tommy didn't take it seriously, resulting in a hilariously uncomfortable interaction where Jimmy threatens to never work with him again.
You know what? From this day on, I will never film with Tommy ever again. I'll never eat above it again.
With all that said, the chain seemed to be on the top of the world, poised to be one of the next fast food titans. They even did a collaboration with Dream, who got his very own menu item for a limited time. But as 2023 rolled in, viewers would be hard-pressed to hear much about MrBeast Burger at all, and Jimmy moved on to new ventures. At first, many assumed a more positive spin to the story. It was surmised that Jimmy had moved his focus to Feastables as the world started to go back to somewhat normal, and that MrBeast Burger was still a feather in Jimmy's hat of business accomplishments. He scaled it, it was running to a level he was satisfied with, he didn't feel like dealing with the complicated nature of adding more physical locations, and moved on to his next win. But this facade started to crumble when the creator Eddie Burback released a viral video in which he scrutinized the world of ghost kitchens. This gave millions a brand new perspective on the once hot new industry, and YouTube's biggest creator was one of the main focal points. Eddie was able to shift the narrative away from ghost kitchens such as MrBeast Burger being an innovative eating experience, to instead that of a soulless business model that took customers away from mom-and-pop shops, with derivative storefronts that sold the same exact food and crowded out competition on apps like DoorDash. There's also been a worrying amount of press about how the government hasn't been able to keep up with new health inspection processes for these invisible storefronts, to keep the public informed on safety and allergy concerns. In some cases, the trailers used to prepare this food have proven unsafe for workers. On top of this, Eddie revealed through his order of Jimmy's signature products that the quality was inconsistent to say the least.
This is what the Impossible Beast style burger is supposed to look like. And this looks like if somebody drew a burger for me? How is this real? It looks like a Krabby Patty.
After the skewering, Jimmy finally took a stronger stance against his once darling business by unlisting the video that premiered the brand. He tweeted, "I started MrBeast Burger to help restaurants make more money during the pandemic, and it worked. But sadly, when working with 2,000 restaurants I don't own, it's impossible to guarantee the order quality. I'm moving on from MrBeast Burger so I can focus on Feastables and making snacks. And to be honest, I just enjoy Feastables 100 times more. Making snacks is awesome and something I'm way more passionate about. But the company I partnered with won't let me stop even though it's terrible for my brand. Young Beast signed a bad deal." Having partnered in 2020 with the ghost kitchen startup Virtual Dining Concepts, things went sour as orders came in that didn't live up to the MrBeast moniker. And it's no surprise that this standoff occurred to many that know the space. When looking at food franchises, there were clearly risks not fully thought out. When the chain Jack in the Box had a containment outbreak leading to someone getting sick and dying, it was almost a death sentence to the brand. Now imagine if something bad happened to a kid eating MrBeast Burger. Jimmy's face would permanently be attached to that story even if he had no involvement with the negligence. In a turn of events, shortly after this fallout went public, many of Jimmy's tweets were deleted, and the video promoting the chain was made live again. It was clear to everyone involved that a fight was brewing behind the scenes as contractual obligations made the YouTuber reverse course for the time being. That came to a head in August of 2023 when MrBeast sued Virtual Dining Concepts for serving what he called disgusting, inedible, and revolting food under his name, and as a result tarnished his brand. He is seeking monetary compensation as well as the ability to end the popular chain for good. VDC didn't take the suit lying down, issuing a public statement shortly after. The complaint is riddled with false statements and inaccuracies, and is a thinly veiled attempt to distract from Mr. Donaldson's and Beast Investments' breaches of the agreements between the parties, including Mr. Donaldson's recent false disparaging statements regarding the MrBeast burger brand and VDC. A week later, VDC filed their own lawsuit against MrBeast. They accused Jimmy of violating his contract, resulting in $100 million in damages. This case is about a social media celebrity who believes his fame means his word does not matter, and the facts do not matter, and that he can renege and breach his contractual obligations without consequence. He is mistaken. So with that, we'll just have to wait and see what happens next. While MrBeast's side seems obvious, MatPat raised an interesting point when discussing the feud on his channel Food Theory. He examined the contracts of similar companies and found they were likely right legally speaking.
That's it. No quality control, no minimum standard, no consistent recipe. Just did we get food items branded with your name onto some Uber Eats menus? And if VDC's contract reads anything like that one, technically by the letter of the contract, they've done their job for MrBeast.
This story seems to all come down to Jimmy signing a bad contract with a shady company to get a nationwide brand overnight. Now he's likely going to waste time, money, and effort dealing with his legal woes. And VDC is fighting for a brand that will slowly die even if they win the case, since the face of it wants no association with what he sees as a lackluster product in a COVID-darling sector. After losing interest in MrBeast Burger, Jimmy launched Feastables, his own line of candies and chocolate bars. It was marketed as a healthier alternative to traditional options, with a special recipe using just 5 organic ingredients.
I wanted to just make a better for you snack brand because I think a lot of the stuff out there is just terrible for you.
Because obviously so much obesity and disease comes from the stuff we eat. Like Hershey's, for example, there's 10 ingredients, super processed. Our Feastables bars are 5 ingredients, and just all the ingredients are way higher quality. And it's infinitely better than the other options out there.
The launch included $1 million sweepstakes and the chance to appear in an upcoming video inspired by the Willy Wonka Golden Ticket giveaway. But this has since faced scrutiny due to one of the tickets ending up in the hands of a vlogger who already had 700,000 subscribers, who would end up winning the chocolate factory.
This was just taped.
It was taped.
No freaking way.
So it is like really like total chance, obviously. Like you're one of like hundreds of thousands of names.
Talk to Jimmy, Bella. What do you got to say to
Jimmy, thank you for picking up.
Over time, these treats would start being sold in Walmart stores across America, and were a big hit with the fanbase. Despite their popularity with subs to the channel, though, they were of course unable to compete with the pre-existing juggernauts of the chocolate industry. This didn't stop Jimmy from trying, though. He even filmed an ad for the Super Bowl, although it wasn't aired because the slot was too expensive.
What's the biggest thing you've ever made?
The biggest thing I've ever made? Probably these nuts.
On March 3rd, 2023, Jimmy posted a tweet lamenting the fact that the Feastables display on store shelves often didn't look as clean and professional as his competitors. This was a similar issue Scott Adams had when he released the Dill Burrito. While he said he was hiring a team to fix this, in the meantime he asked his fans to tidy up any Feastables displays they saw in the wild. There were some onlookers who took issue with this, accusing MrBeast of using his audience for free labor. But for the most part, his fans were happy to help. The thing that really set people over the edge, though, was a different tweet posted shortly thereafter. And while you're at it, if you want to maybe move some Hershey's bars and make sure Feastables has plenty of space, I wouldn't complain. While most of his fans saw this as sarcasm, others accused him of being petty. But the biggest criticism came from those who noticed the timing of his tweet. You see, around this period, Hershey had been receiving backlash for a new ad campaign which featured a trans woman. While there weren't many people making this connection, it was enough for some to accuse him of trying to use bigotry to promote his product. They then started to use the old Taylor Lorenz hit piece to back up their point. Most people simply chose to mock this way of thinking, but it seemed as though MrBeast did not want to deal with the headache and soon deleted his tweet. But this isn't where the campaign ended. That same day, the Feastables account replied announcing the plea would become a $5,000 contest. They went so far as to ask fans to find an employee and ask them to check in the back so they could restock it themselves. This sparked even more outrage as he was asking literal children to pester low-wage workers at Walmart. This led to it being covered by Forbes and Business Insider, and made people question how sarcastic or off-the-cuff his initial tweets were. The year ended with worse news for the brand after MrBeast lost the trademark dispute over the flavor D's Nuts. With Feastables not taking off as much as he'd hoped, a few months later he announced their new formula. It was a stark departure from his original pitch, now having many of the same low-quality ingredients as Hershey's, but with more sugar and more calories per bar. If all that wasn't bad enough, these weren't the only claims Jimmy seemed to go back on. When Feastables launched back in 2022, they stated they didn't use child or slave labor. They had an entire page for the slave-free claim.
Don't support this. I'm rich.
Is Feastables like ethical? Like,
Yeah, we do ethical
accept-
farming.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Of course. That was the first thing we talked about when we got into it. I was like, I don't want to do it unless we can obviously do it proper.
This remained on the site through several updates, until being quietly removed in October of 2023. The discrepancy was noticed by a YouTuber named Honestly, who accused MrBeast of reaping the benefits of this feat while knowing full well they could eventually use child and slave labor. Since basically the beginning of his YouTube career, Jimmy has been joined by his good friend Kris Tyson. From the channel's humble beginnings to the titan of online entertainment that is today, Kris has been one of the biggest faces of the MrBeast brand for many years. In the early days, Tyson represented a very masculine southern presence in the group dynamic. That's why, when fans started noticing certain physical changes that Kris had been going through, they became confused. On April 4th, 2023, a Twitter user posted a side-by-side comparison of how the entertainer looked several years ago versus the latest MrBeast video. His beard was gone, his hair had grown longer, his arms were thinner, and even the shape of his face had changed. This tweet included the caption, "Bro, WTF happened?" signifying many fans' confusion as to what was going on behind the scenes. This question was soon answered the next day when Kris replied to the post by saying, "HRT and it's only been 2 months." He went into further detail on his second account, explaining why he felt the care he was receiving was so important. Informed consent HRT saved my and many others' lives. The hurdles GNC people have to jump through to get life-saving gender-affirming healthcare in a first-world country is wild to me. Just let people make informed decisions about their own bodies. With this information now public, it's doubtful that Kris or anyone on the MrBeast team could have predicted what a massive response it would go on to receive, both positive and negative. While Jimmy, other MrBeast members, and legions of fans all threw their support behind the transitioning YouTube star, many expressed their objections to what he was doing. The most common talking point seemed to come from a belief that Kris had abandoned his wife and child in order to adopt this new lifestyle. While it was true that the married couple had separated, there was no evidence at the time the split was due to the transition. In addition, Kris flatly denied any rumors that he would stop being a presence in his son's life. "Tucker begs for me to come back when I leave for like 2 days to film. He is so loved and happy. Kids aren't born with hate. It's taught by people like you. And my child will only know love. I know I'm going to be a great parent, and so is every other person who puts the love of their child before everything. I made this decision because I wanted to show up as my best and happiest self for him." In a way, this was for Tucker. While this statement generated more support from those who stood behind Kris, the skeptics stood firm with their belief that, even if the MrBeast member wasn't abandoning his child, he was still depriving him of a fatherly figure. As for Jimmy himself, his responses were brief, but still showed that he was in his friend's corner. As all of this was happening, a Twitter user by the name of Jacksepticeye, who had been one of the people posting memes making fun of Kris, tweeted out a screenshot from an apparent message he had received from Tyson. In it, the MrBeast team member seemed to be threatening a defamation lawsuit due to the memes he had been spreading. This tweet quickly gained traction, with many believing it to be legitimate. The post soon caught the attention of Kris himself, who responded jokingly with a picture of Jimmy captioned, "My lawyer will be in contact with you immediately." While most were able to recognize that both parties had not been serious, there were still many people who took the story at face value, and began publishing news articles about this alleged lawsuit. Kris soon reached out to Jacksepticeye privately in an attempt to clear the air, but the Twitter user did not accept the olive branch, as his animosity toward Tyson was apparently all too real. At the very least, speculation about Kris's legal actions died down after this, even if the debate regarding Kris's transition continued to rage on. On April 13th, a YouTuber by the name of SunnyV2 uploaded a video titled "Why Kris Will Soon Be a Nightmare for MrBeast," in which he went over the details of the controversy and explained why he believed it would be a potential disaster for the MrBeast brand. However, viewers took issue with the arguments he used. For example, at one point in the video, Sunny says this.
This was put forward in many comments supportive of Kris, who implied that there'll be millions of queer kids who look up to him, although this doesn't necessarily mean that it'll add any value to the videos. MrBeast has likely cultivated a massive LGBT audience, all of whom are already watching anyway, and if we've learned anything from Hollywood in recent years, it's that adding over-the-top LGBT characters for the sake of relatability rarely works as intended, and is often nothing more than a distraction from the premise of the movie or video.
Many people objected heavily to Sunny's conclusion here, saying that comparing the personal decisions of a real person to the depiction of a gay character in a fictional movie was absurd. The video quickly became the most widely discussed response to the drama, with SunnyV2 trending on Twitter for multiple days afterward, and the upload itself receiving a near 50-50 like-to-dislike ratio. Even MrBeast himself chimed in. "Yeah, this is getting absurd. Kris isn't my nightmare, he's my f***ing friend, and things are fine. All this transphobia is starting to piss me off." If he hadn't made his position on the matter clear earlier, this response firmly established Jimmy's full support behind Kris. But just like before, while many people praised the YouTube star for standing up for his friends, many continued expressing their objections to what was happening. MrBeast's former collaborator Sneako even called out the team on a livestream, saying that they should be trying to convince Kris to change his mind rather than supporting him.
People that are encouraging this, they think that they're doing the right thing. They're all brainwashed. Even MrBeast thinks that he's doing the right thing by supporting his friend Kris. Brainwashed. If you really cared, you would not encourage his delusion now. You would look at the long term and see that this is something that he's doing because he is brainwashed by social media.
Other commentators in that sphere also weighed in, with some agreeing that it was irresponsible of Jimmy to support Kris, while others echoed Sunny's perspective, that MrBeast had been socially backed into a corner.
MrBeast is stuck between a rock and a hard place. Because if he says to Kris, "Listen, Kris, you're screwing up the dynamic of the show. Right? We didn't bargain for this. You want to make your personal life decisions, you want to take some time, you want to figure out what you're all about, that's fine. But you don't get to enact your personal dramas on the set of my billion-dollar show. You don't really get to do that."
On top of that, other people on Twitter voiced concern for Kris's son after he posted a photo to Snapchat of the child wearing high-heeled shoes. They saw this as proof that Tyson was attempting to groom his offspring into his lifestyle, and that he was no longer a fit to be a father. Or I guess mother. But regardless of any criticism they were receiving, the MrBeast team stood by Kris, and kept him as an active member of the group. Even many of MrBeast's usual detractors stood up for him in this case, as he was sticking up for a friend before business. There was speculation Tyson may have been let go from the company, but he clarified on Snapchat that he was just taking a break from the spotlight in order to spend more time with his son. This is where things petered off for a while, with the mass exodus of viewers many predicted not happening. It would of course reignite a year later, which we'll get to soon, but for the time being, Kris continued to appear in videos as the MrBeast brand kept on raking millions of subscribers in the meantime. In late 2023, Tommy Innit posted a video where he and 3 other creators did an offensive lie detector test. That included Jacksepticeye, who first blew up on the platform over a decade ago. While they answered many inflammatory questions, the most controversial proved to be the one directed to the Irish gamer about MrBeast.
Do you think MrBeast ruined YouTube?
Yes.
Now, in all honesty, Jack, why?
Because it became more about views, money, and popularity than it did about having fun.
These remarks angered many who were quick to defend MrBeast's honor. You see, at the time, Jimmy was largely seen as a fun-having, altruistic, good-hearted philanthropist. They accused the legacy creator of being out of touch and jealous. The clip even caught the attention of MrBeast himself, who responded on Twitter. So, I ruined YouTube because I didn't buy a mansion and sports car and instead reinvested my money into making content focused on doing good and inspiring kids to help people? If he had fun, the videos would be longer. What does that even mean, LOL? You think I'd give up every hour of my life for 14 years if I didn't have fun? This clip is insanely disrespectful in my opinion, and obviously there is so much I could say about his content, but I'll just take the punches and be the bigger man. Sigh. This passive-aggressive comment quickly eclipsed the original statement, with most taking his side even though he was clearly not being the bigger man. The two would end up messaging in private to de-escalate and resolve the feud. I think this goes to show just how different MrBeast's perception was at the time, where even mild criticism stirred major backlash. This reputation slowly chipped away as more and more cracks formed in the facade. With MrBeast's controversy picking up steam, it served as inspiration for an article by Patricia Hernandez on Polygon. The writer sifted through various interviews and podcast appearances to dig past Jimmy's facade, and instead painted the startling image of a man warped by the very platform he sought to dominate. I'm just going to read a few of the excerpts here that went viral and got reposted over and over as scandals continued to mount. In reviewing dozens of MrBeast videos from over the years, Donaldson has nearly erased himself as a person from his episodic output. If viewers don't really see him having fun, that's by design. Donaldson has outright said he sees personality as a limitation for growth, once noting in a podcast that hinging your content on who you are as a person means risking not being liked. If someone doesn't like a creator as a person, they may not give the videos a chance.
It is entertaining. She's a naturally funny person, and I couldn't do that. Or if I did, it wouldn't be so off the cuff. Yeah. But it's she's tied down to her personality. If you don't like Emma, then you're not gonna watch her videos. You know what I mean? Well, it's just because I'm all in. I'm crazy. People shouldn't be me. I don't have a life. I don't have work-life balance. My personality, my soul, my being is making the best videos possible. I'm miserable a lot of times. I have a mental breakdown every other week. I don't recommend it.
This has fueled theories Jimmy might actually be a psychopath, which really isn't helped by clips where he states he hated pretending to be a normal person.
You miss being able to go out and do things like a normal person? No,
I literally never did. No, I've always just worked. I can't stand that. I didn't fit in. And when I was younger, I would try to be more like normal people. I mean, it just make me depressed. It would make me be like, why am I even alive? I'm bored. This makes me want to kill myself. And I'll do these normal things, and I'll go out to eat and sit there and talk about nothing.
Or when Jimmy contemplated getting a Neuralink to make more money.
I thought Elon Musk gave you a Neuralink, bro.
I would love one, by the way. You'll be able to make so much money.
It doesn't scare you at all?
No,
you're pretty much a robot at that point.
But we already are.
I feel like it's just making people less human.
Probably.
For sure.
Yeah.
These bizarre clips gained even more traction when he announced his interest in running for president, which may sound like a joke, but is a sentiment he has elaborated on several times.
You could just go from just being a celebrity to just being president. That would be great. I think I could make it interesting enough where I could win.
Okay, well, how?
Give away all my money and just I know how to get people's attention. You know? I can't say too much because then I'll regret it in the future. I'll be like, I'll just trick all the fucking idiots.
This hubris would all serve as a preamble for people starting to really question his good guy image, which only deteriorated further as his brand descended into a firestorm of allegations over the summer of 2024. And in a bitter twist of irony, the start of it belied Kris Tyson, with the first domino falling shortly after announcing she was no longer going by her original pronouns. While the backlash surrounding Kris's gender identity eventually petered out, the outrage led many to dig through her online past. This resurfaced tweets in which she professed a love for lolicon. While some of these could be written off as jokes, most damning was a print she bought from a controversial artist named Shadman. This is coming from a guy who owns a Shadman drawing and has it as a centerpiece in his living room. Shadman is a lolicon artist that used to depict real-life children. The artist drew 12-year-old actress Daphne Keane, as well as Keemstar's 7-year-old daughter back in late 2016. The tweet of Kris showing off the poster is dated July 2017, well after that info was publicly known. It wasn't a one-off either, with Kris replying to the artist and other lolicons regularly over the next 2 years. There was even an instance where she accidentally pulled his site up on stream. These tweets were all deleted shortly after resurfacing. The connection was largely overlooked, with the prevailing narrative simply about her being trans. However, it reared its head again in 2024 due to infighting among online leftists. To make a long story short, a guy called Vosh accidentally flashed his quote-unquote tax folder on stream. The brief glimpse showed many unsavory horse-related images, with some even classified as lolly. The absurdity got Ethan Klein of H3H3 to pick up the story for his podcast. This brought many to Vosh's defense, such as a trans streamer named Keffels. The back and forth led her to bring up Kris in an attempt at guilt by association. Ethan reacted to this info live on air, with the entire crew visibly disturbed.
I don't believe Kris has shared anything like this since. I don't know if she's talked about it. I don't know. Like, is it gross? Yeah, it's gross. Of course it is.
While this still didn't get much attention, it resulted in our first response from Kris on the matter. If anyone ever asks, just say you talked to me and I explained it was a shit joke to get likes from a reply from Shad. I didn't even know about all the stuff he did. But one of his first controversies, I stopped interacting with him a long time ago. It seemed like this would fade into obscurity again until July 16th when a YouTuber named Adrox posted a video detailing her troubling ties to the artist. The Sunny V2 clone's video garnered over 1.3 million views, opening the floodgates for widespread scrutiny of her past. Things were quickly getting out of hand, and they were only about to get worse as attention shifted to a video uploaded just a month prior that delved into even more serious accusations. Dominoes in the MrBeast empire really started to fall when a small creator named Prism42 began sifting through old tweets. He found interactions between Kris and a video editor named LavaGS. Lava was a fan of MrBeast long before the channel blew up, being among the first 500 subscribers. He even won a giveaway, receiving a CSGO knife signed by Jimmy. Eventually, Lava managed to appear in a video on MrBeast's gaming channel. These help contextualize the period at which Kris reached out to befriend the minor. They began communicating both publicly and in private. While some of their interactions were normal, like playing Uno or referencing in-jokes, many were questionable given Kris was 20 at the time and Lava was just 14. The teen often called Kris dad and joked about the MrBeast cast members' hentai addiction, implying there was some sort of chat about the subject. They also made a lot of weird sexual jokes that simply came across as inappropriate. That's only what was public, as the two mostly spoke over Discord and Snapchat. The tweets showed normalized behavior that raised questions about their one-on-one calls. There wasn't a smoking gun, but the details painted a concerning picture, especially given Lava later met up with Kris in real life. Although it must be acknowledged the entire MrBeast crew was present for this. Without a clear answer, Prism made a video about his findings, expressing fear Lava may have been groomed.
But the fact that someone is in college, socializing and making friends with a middle schooler is highly inappropriate, especially because he's also bisexual and he's attracted to men as well.
While Prism posted this in June, it only picked up after Adrox's video, who credited him in the description. A lot of YouTubers began reporting on the allegations, escalating until Lava was forced to make his own statement where he denied being a victim. These videos are massive lies and twisting the truth. Ava never did anything wrong and just made a few edgy jokes. I was never exploited or taken advantage of. Can you do me a favor and comment on these videos and tell them to stop spreading lies? This situation takes away from children who are actively being exploited every day online. I am not a victim of anything being claimed in these videos or at all. The community still wasn't convinced, with many pointing out victims sometimes take a long time to realize what happened to them. There were several other factors that led people to question the narrative. On the other hand, the way Prism handled his investigation was also strange, to say the least. When his investigation into Kris wasn't getting covered, he tried enlisting EDP445 and Kris Chan to help. That was while presenting the video with his Sonichu medallion. If that wasn't bad enough, much of the info actually came from interviewing Lava under the false pretense of a job interview. That meant he dangled a video editing gig over the alleged victim's head to get them to open up about a potentially traumatic experience. These actions muddied the waters, making it impossible to figure out how credible it was. At this point though, none of it actually exonerated Kris, who by this point was seen as a disturbed individual. The Shadman case was personal to Keem, who revealed he spoke to Kris a month prior. It must be understood that back in the day, a lot of creators were buddy-buddy with this supposed pedophile. This got a lot of people caught in the crossfire. The list is exhaustive, including Ricky Berwick, Belle Delphine, and one of the creators of Smiling Friends. Keem went on the warpath, bullying one into deleting their account. Now it should be noted that there's a difference between a YouTuber liking Shad's art before he was a known pedo, and people that explicitly bought his lolly artwork. So many kept on digging through Kris's past, finding an old Reddit account called TysonBoy34. This revealed even more unsavory posts. In a post about teen love, she said, 14-year-olds always stay 14. Kris also thanks someone for introducing them to a subreddit called Real Scat Girls. This is unsettling given she had shared videos of her son Tucker pooping in the tub. The video was removed by TikTok for violating their graphic content policy. Kris even replied to a comment about Shadman with, "It ain't porn unless it's got a she-penis." The same day this was unearthed, a video surfaced of Tyson sharing revenge porn of iCarly actress Jeanette McCurdy to his audience.
You'll probably see the photos get taken down at some point tonight, maybe tomorrow, because Nickelodeon has that kind of power. But the link's in the description if you want to see them. I mean, I'm not endorsing people to go look at somebody else's private business, but I know that people might want to see them, so it's there if you want it.
With all of this brewing online, several allegations began to pour out. The most credible were recordings of Discord calls where inappropriate comments were made in the presence of minors.
I know, dude, I would come inside of that egg and then watch her eat it, and then watch her have sex with another man while she comments about how my genitalia can never satisfy her.
The user, who claimed to be an underage fan, also shared a Snapchat conversation in which Kris sends kisses and heart emojis while calling them dad. Kris deleted their entire Snapchat account once these surfaced. It's probably unsurprising to hear this, but a lot of people began trying to weaponize the situation. With how much outrage there was since she opened up about her transition, many transphobes stepped forward to take a victory lap. That included Sneako, who pressured others to talk about the situation. Sneako accused creators like Critical of being inconsistent and trying to cover it up. This turned into its own controversy, which I won't get into here because the video is already long enough, but at the end of the day, it ended with Critical having to take a break from the internet after taking Sneako's bait. It's worth noting, however, Sneako actually did speak about his time at MrBeast.
But I remember when I was working for MrBeast, like in that time of 2017, 2018, I remember Kris saying, like, isn't she hot? Isn't, like, Cash Me Outside Girl, isn't she, like, 14? Is she 14 years old? Yeah, it's jailbait. And I'm like, what?
This wouldn't be credible on its own, but a clip emerged of MrBeast making a similar remark about the girl back in 2017.
Let's be real. You wouldn't put your dick in her?
I mean, it's
probably
not. Enjoying. And
I don't think she's 14. They're too big to be 14. That's
she seems older than that. But
I don't think she's real.
While clearly a joke, it makes Sneako's story less far-fetched and provides insight as to what their humor was like behind the scenes. It's also worth mentioning Kris liked tweets sexualizing her publicly. The scandal grew louder every day, to the point a response was inevitable. It would become an inescapable brand risk, with Kris losing over 37,000 followers. The MrBeast cast member finally broke her silence on July 23rd, reading, "I would like to apologize for any of my past behavior or comments if it hurt or offended anyone. It was not my intent. Seeing recent events, we've mutually decided it's best I permanently step away from all things MrBeast and social media to focus on my family and mental health. I want to add, I never groomed anyone. The person who gets brought up in these accusations, Lava GS, has vocally supported that they are false. Having said that, I humbly apologize to anyone I have hurt with my unacceptable social media posts, past actions, and those who may feel betrayed by how I used to act online. To lump these two factors together to create a narrative that my behavior extended beyond bad edgy jokes is disgusting, and did not happen. In past years, I have learned that my old humor is not acceptable. I cannot change who I was, but I can continue to work on myself. I don't want these accusations to impact the hundreds of people who work at MrBeast, which is why I have stepped away. This was a lackluster response, with none of the Shadman stuff really being addressed. There's only a vague reference to bad edgy jokes, when clearly her interest in lolicon art went beyond finding it funny. The next day, MrBeast issued his own statement. This contradicted her claim that she left, with Jimmy stating she had been removed. I've seen enough online and taken immediate action to remove Ava from the company, my channel, and any association with MrBeast. He claimed to have hired an independent third party to conduct a thorough investigation. Even his response was met with harsh criticism, because he claimed to have only just become aware of his friend's online behavior. Again, there is video proof that this wasn't the case. If you'll recall, Kris claimed to have hung up the Shadman poster as a centerpiece in their living room. Well, it turns out that was while the two were still living together, and it can actually be seen in several MrBeast videos. In tipping pizza delivery guys $10,000, Jimmy looks directly at the poster while in the background. This got his tweet community noted multiple times, though it curiously disappeared on every single occasion. Many wondered if it had anything to do with his camaraderie with Elon Musk, the owner of Twitter. And really, that was only the beginning, as things were only going to get worse for MrBeast and his brand as even more damning evidence began to surface. On July 24th, another accuser stepped forward named Nathan Wayman. This individual alleged Kris preyed on him when he was only 15. As the story goes, he used to be friends with Lava, as they both were involved in running Tyson's Discord server. It was originally a private group with around 10 members, most of whom were underage. He was invited after helping with MrBeast's 10 million subscriber special. Nathan claimed Kris frequently brought up sexual topics, having an NSFW channel and even a hentai bot set up by Lava. He would often share adult videos and spam the chat with lewd artwork. That was on top of calling the minors dad and daddy. Nathan explained the server was later made public, and they were instructed to wipe any inappropriate behavior. That included any potential evidence, as well as Kris's many instances of saying the N-word.
Who claims he isn't a victim, but we all know he is, and we all know he probably got paid off. Not only that, but he's also under an NDA from when he worked for MrBeast Gaming for 2 years, and he tried to get me to join MrBeast Gaming himself, Lava. He's the one who actually sent me the contract and tried to get me to sign the NDA, at which point I ended our friendship because I knew they were just trying to silence me.
Lava was quick to respond, accusing Nathan of lying and trying to discredit him. He confirmed Nathan was in the Discord, but denied it was scrubbed of racist remarks or adult content. He was later removed from the Discord because of how unstable he was. He would lash out and verbally attack other members of the team. This rebuttal fell short when another member spoke out named Cookie, who alleged to have been active there when he was 16. Unlike the others, he had receipts, with a complete archive of the server due to an unrelated scandal. That allowed him to prove Lava was either misremembering or lying, showing screenshots of the cover-up. He was able to get in contact with Nathan, and they worked together to prove his claims were legitimate.
Here you can see Kris talking about locking down the NSFW channel to True Gods and Anointed only. By the way, this is in 2019. I was a True God and I was a minor. Not only that, but you can see me right below it, Nathan.rtx, saying this is a bad idea. So even I knew as a kid that this was a really bad idea. Here is Lava himself talking about starting the commencement of cleaning the server, word for word. I said he was talking about scrubbing the server. He says that never happened. Here you can see him talking about it, as well as me and Cookie himself talking about it.
This caused Lava to retract a portion of his statement. This was 5 or 6 years ago, and I thought I had a good memory of the situation, but I was wrong. After reading the chat logs, this stuff was inappropriate and wrong. These conversations should not have happened with people at the age I was at the time. I strongly condemn them. I still believe I am not a grooming victim, but these conversations should not have happened with me and any other minors in this Discord. Soon after, Nathan and Cookie began teasing a release of the full chat logs containing over 500,000 messages. The theatrics were admittedly kind of bizarre, with the website set up to count down the exact second it was released. The clock struck 0 on July 27th, and with that, the full leaks of the Discord server were made available to the public. With the entire dump accessible online, people began digging through only to find a lot of reprehensible behavior. Despite the dump showing how the server was after it had been purged, there was still a heap of evidence. The first thing worth emphasizing is nearly all of the staff were minors. This bizarre choice exposed them to things they should have been protected from. On at least one occasion, someone posted CP on the server, and they were forced to take action. In fact, the majority of active members were quite young, yet nothing was done to curb the discussion of NSFW subjects. There were at least 31 minors present in the server, with the youngest being 10 years old. 7 were part of the staff, and Tyson flat out stated that the average age of the server was 14. There were 288 mentions of lolly in the server, with one user even referred to as the designated lolly after stating they were 12. Kris shared Shadman's site multiple times, and talked about trapping another member, before clarifying it meant forced feminization. Kris even suggested being aroused to an attached image of a 14-year-old. The file name implies this was once again in reference to the Catch Me Outside girl. The only defense you could possibly muster to this Discord server is that Kris didn't realize how inappropriate this all was at the time. But even this falls apart given her own underage fans question the NSFW content existing at all. This argument took place after a user pointed out how easy it was for minors to bypass the pop-up asking if they were 18. Many felt it should be relegated to edgy memes. They were ruled against by one of the mods. Eventually, the NSFW channel was locked in late 2018, so only staff could access it. However, as we've established, many of his mods were minors. To make matters somehow even worse, Kris considered extending it to allow gore, which has very troubling implications whichever way you slice it. The last user worth highlighting is named Discount Milk, a real-life friend of Kris. Milk often fought for Kris's attention, even suggesting she should ditch your wife, spend no money, and work for Jimmy for 2 years, and you'll have enough money to be a NEET. Kris replied, "I would love to sell everything I have and just live in a shitty apartment and play Vidya and watch anime all day, lol." This is notable because in the wake of all this, Lava took to Twitter to state, "There's a few individuals in the leaks who deserve to be investigated. One name is Milk, who is an IRL friend of Kris and the same age as them. Was someone me and Nathan grew to despise, and I'm sure he will agree with me on that. He was a disturbed individual and we fought tooth and nail with Kris to get him banned, which did eventually happen. I encourage you all to read them thoroughly. I again am stating that I am personally not a victim, but there are many other allegations, Shadman, essay, victims, etc. I have seen that I strongly condemn and hope they are investigated and the proper action is taken." The final detail worth mentioning is that MrBeast himself was actually in the server. It's unclear how active he was, given his only message was to chime in on the size of Kris's penis. He left sometime around early 2020. Despite being in the midst of a legal battle, MrBeast Burger would end up taking their Kris Tyson item off the menu in response to these leaks. Now, Jimmy was already receiving a lot of backlash for what many perceived as complicity in this debauchery. However, he was about to become the center of his own controversy, as at the exact same time an ex-employee was preparing what would become the most disastrous series of callouts against the YouTuber to date. While many ex-employees have spoken out against MrBeast in the past, they were largely unsuccessful in getting support from the public. That can be attributed to a variety of factors, from a lack of evidence to just a generally poor presentation. This next story began on July 22nd with a brand new Twitter account called Dogpack404. That day, Dogpack shared a video of himself driving outside MrBeast's studio while listening to Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar.
And when Jake the Viking says, MrBeast knew? Yeah, MrBeast knew.
Dawson goes on to state Kris was already known as a major liability, but she threatened legal action and knew too much to be fired. This is presumably related to a tweet she posted in early 2024 alluding to legal action after being misgendered and dead-named.
I mean, I just heard through the grapevine that, yeah, she was like pissed at the company and wanting to, whatever it's called, like discrimination or something, for like people being transphobic.
As it turns out, Dawson had been planning his expose for a while, with the other scandals just so happening to coincide at the same time. I think it would be helpful before getting into his section to try to iron out Dogpack's background at the company and his motivation for making this project. According to a document he created, Dawson has 10 years of experience in the industry. He started as an on-camera personality, but preferred working behind the scenes. His stated goal for doing this was to expose what he felt was an evil corporation. I believe MrBeast is a corrupt organization that is bad for humanity, despite their glowing public image. I was often appalled when higher-ups at the company would talk about sophisticated ways to exploit children's psychological development for their own gain while disregarding the well-being of those children. Dogpack has two known Reddit accounts, MrBeast Creative and That Fivehead Guy. The second was created in early 2023, which he used to look for jobs. He initially tried making merch for XQC, having previously worked at Zoomies. This didn't pan out, so he moved on to MrBeast, becoming active in their subreddit. He began suggesting ideas for videos before designing his own candy wrappers. This became a series where he pitched a new concept every day, even making a 14-minute video to show off his process. By then, he already applied to the company 3 times. This went on for 11 days until a member of the team reached out to give him a chance. He began as an unpaid trainee, getting his first NDA on February 22nd. He moved to Greenville a few weeks later, signing his official 90-day contract on March 25th. This is where things get a little strange. If you read through his posts, he usually seems like a MrBeast fan discussing their latest uploads. On the other hand, he also left comments criticizing the channel. Many of these same points were used in his videos. This begs the question, was Dawson really just a disgruntled employee, or did he infiltrate the company to collect more info against them? It's hard to say with statements like these. I think his company is full of non-creative leeches. Personally, I think it's stupid to fake things as much as he does. Lottery would be illegal, but this is essentially what all his sweepstakes are. It's honestly baffling that no one did their due diligence at MrBeast before hiring this guy. Dawson was let go early on April 25th for reasons that are unclear. He was subsequently hired by the company Idea Guys, of which MrBeast is a client. This apparently meant the founder had to get permission from MrBeast to hire him. That's where Dawson would stay until leaving of his own volition on July 19th, 2024. 5 days later, he put out the first of his expose, I worked for MrBeast, he's a fraud. There's a lot to cover from this nearly hour-long video, but I'll try my best to summarize it. The major claims can be divided into 3 categories. The first is that his videos are much more deceptive than his viewers realize. Dawson argues MrBeast intentionally manipulates his young fans with tactics that closely resemble the 3 types of behavioral learning.
Step 1 is getting the viewer to associate the brand with trust and authority. Step 2 is showing the viewers that when people interact with MrBeast in a way that benefits MrBeast, when they do what he tells them to do, they win big rewards. And step 3 is finally calling on the viewer to act in some way that benefits the brand.
Dawson then deconstructs the facade, first by proving many of their videos were faked. In addition to using CGI, some uploads were flat out staged using paid actors or camera-trained celebrities. Then he discusses how contestants were often undisclosed friends or family of employees. The most egregious example is Mac, who appeared in 8 different MrBeast videos. Dawson was able to prove Mac started editing for MrBeast 2 months before being introduced as a contestant. The storyline presented in their videos was fake, with Mac moving into a $1 million mansion after agreeing to work full-time.
Wait, he's about to be the first one out? That's unlike him.
And though you got out first, I still have a prize for you. Just wait here.
Oh, first person out gets a car, and it just happened to be your friend Mac.
This leads him into detailing how many of their contests were unfairly rigged. He revisits claims from Rosanna Pansino, who spoke out after participating in MrBeast's video Hide and Seek.
The other thing that they said is absolutely no climbing in the air vents or the ceiling. And they said it's because they do all their wiring in the ceiling.
Dawson points out they weren't abiding by the standards of practices typically in place to ensure challenges are fair. The second category shows how MrBeast exploits that sense of trust for profit. Dawson analyzed Jimmy's shirt signing live streams and felt many of his giveaways constituted illegal lotteries. That's because there was no free method of entry that contained equal odds of winning, which is required for a sweepstakes. He also found 13 extra shady instances in which they did not give the prize in the original time frame.
Okay, so we're gonna put 2 iPhones in this piñata, and we're gonna give it to someone who orders a shirt in 3 minutes? 5 minutes.
Yeah,
oh,
we did one.
Shoot. Oh wait, hey Daryl, first action, before we do that, we never picked a piñata.
If all that wasn't bad enough, he caught employees signing merch with fake autographs.
Illegal lotteries targeted towards children and selling fake signatures. I mean, imagine if any other YouTuber was caught doing this. MrBeast just uses gambling psychology to exploit young children for profit. He's just become the first casino where the currency you pay with is attention.
Dawson even found a clip of MrBeast's former manager, Reed of Night Media, stating he had to convince Jimmy not to promote an unregulated video game gambling site.
Jimmy was, he wanted to work with that company when he heard about it because there was a lot of money and we wanted to give that money away in a video, and I had to talk him back on it. I was like, listen, we're not promoting gambling. I think people are going to see this negatively. So there's a long conversation that him and I had to have, which eventually we passed on the deal, and then Jake Paul and Rice Gum ended up doing that deal and got a lot of hate for it.
The third and final category is about undermining the idea MrBeast actually wants to solve any of the problems he claims to care about. He specifically takes issue with the company's recent Zaxby's combo meal, as well as the new Feastables formula. Dawson explains that as a certified nutritionist, this was something he pushed back on at the company. He argues Jimmy was essentially bribing children to eat chocolate, contradicting his supposed better-for-you vision.
$10,000 a day as a giveaway is very deliberate because it's trying to create repeat customers that just buy out of habits. Like, doing this especially when you clearly understand how much of a health risk it is to these kids.
Because obviously so much obesity and disease comes from the stuff we eat.
It's honestly just fucking evil to me.
With that, we've gone through the major claims in Dawson's first upload. It quickly amassed over 2 million views as the drama cycle began to shift from Kris toward MrBeast's company as a whole. Many were curious how the face of YouTube would respond, given the severity of the lottery accusations. But rather than Jimmy, the silence was instead broken by an associate named Chucky. What must be understood is that in 2023, a social media analytics site was launched called ViewStats. The Social Blade Killer was co-founded by MrBeast, who gave exclusive access to his live subcount. The platform was made with Chucky Appleby, a creator that now made thumbnails for MrBeast. On July 29th, Chucky made a post responding to Dawson's video. He was apparently behind the decision to fire him in the first place for erratic behavior. He states the ex-employee worked there for less than a month, and wasn't present for most of the videos he discussed. He first disputes the claim of contestants being undisclosed friends and family of employees. This is a wild statement that can easily be proven wrong. There's probably hundreds or thousands of people who have no affiliation. Jimmy doesn't know more than like a dozen people. While he says this to discredit the claim, to me it sounds like he's actually admitting to the accusation but downplaying the severity. He then states that their use of CGI wasn't a secret, before picking out a comment about a raccoon in the video being a paid actor.
This guy is fake. This raccoon is a paid actor.
Chucky goes on to argue many of the storylines and elements Dawson said were staged were in fact real, before accusing him of drug abuse and suggesting he delete the video. I could keep going, but I don't want to be too long. Dawson himself said on Reddit that he was on shrooms and weed when filming this video, which might explain some of the made-up stuff. But what Chucky didn't address spoke volumes. The closest he gets to acknowledging the illegal lotteries claim is broadly stating they don't fake giveaways. Dawson replied by calling it an attempt to assassinate his character. He denied ever being a drug user, going so far as to state weed made him anxious. It should be noted this is an abject lie, given old posts show he experimented with DMT, though to be fair it still doesn't discredit his actual arguments. Dawson stood by his video, pointing out Chucky only rebutted 9 relatively inconsequential claims. Bruh, you expect people to believe Kris and Chandler were just petting an actual wild raccoon? Is it not concerning that after 5 days they have only been able to debunk 9 claims out of the hundreds I made in my video? This didn't stop some from pushing the narrative it had been completely debunked. While many YouTubers were reluctant to support Dogpack, the audience felt differently. The video saw explosive growth, quickly surpassing 7 million views. There was suddenly a lot of pressure for creators to cover the drama, lest they get accused of sweeping it under the rug. When Oompaville discussed the story, his comments were filled with people saying he was downplaying its severity. There was enough outcry that Caleb eventually invited Dawson on for an interview to set the record straight.
People think that I broke my NDA, but like 90% of that video is public information, and then like the other 10% is about crimes. It was like, it was pretty decently strategic. I don't think they would have a case, and like I've spoken with lawyers and everything, so.
Most infamous of his YouTuber interactions was with streamer Ludwig. The streamer was good friends with Jimmy, to the point he was once given a scrapped MrBeast video for his channel. It remains his most viewed upload to this very day. Whilst reacting on stream, the ex-employee appeared in his chat. Ludwig invited him to call, resulting in a very bizarre interaction.
You're a theater kid, right?
No. I was an athlete in high school.
Nah, you're a theater kid, be honest.
I did one musical. I was an athlete. I was varsity soccer for 2 years. I'm a Red Bull athlete now, buddy. Okay?
Okay, so you're a theater kid. So you should be able to tell when I'm joking and when I'm acting and when I'm being serious.
Were you on shrooms?
No, not really.
Okay, no. You don't get away with that one. What does that mean? Most people are either on them or not on them. I've never been not really on shrooms.
Have you ever done shrooms?
No. Well, I did psilocybin for the Yard podcast. You can watch it.
Really?
Yes, sir.
How much?
Yo, you are a shroom head.
Dawson becomes suspicious of Ludwig's questions, accusing the streamer of trying to get him to break his NDA, before questioning if he was autistic and calling him controlled opposition.
Have you like been diagnosed with anything?
Are you calling me autistic? No. So you haven't done shrooms? That's correct. Why'd you go quiet?
Sorry, I was getting water. What'd you say?
Okay, no, that was weird. You're fucking with me right now.
You haven't even watched the video, dude. Go watch the video. Call me
You were
after,
in my chat.
You are controlled opposition.
What does that mean?
It means you're trying to get me to reveal confidential information and break my NDA.
The comments decisively stood against Ludwig. While it's hard to say Dawson's paranoia was justified, the pressure was building. On July 31st, the Associated Press put out an article about the recent scandals. They got comments from MrBeast's spokesperson about Jimmy's edgy past. That day, Dawson got a cease and desist. He responded by criticizing MrBeast's Philanthropy, which got him another one the next day. It became clear Jimmy knew of the mounting criticism, but didn't want to make a public response. This had troubling implications when Dawson shared anonymous messages alleging someone named James had hired private investigators to discredit him. He wants them to reach out to your former employers, find all your social media accounts, your family's social media accounts, videos of you, anything. They already have a Google Doc listing possible ways to discredit you, including you're on drugs, and you have mental health problems, your mom is bipolar, you were an obsessed superfan, you were crying and begging for your job back after they fired you, you tried to steal company funds, etc., etc. I don't know what's true and what's not, but personally I think you should just take everything down ASAP. If you take it down, they'll leave you alone. Many saw this anonymous message as nothing more than gaslighting by MrBeast's associates. To be clear, there is no proof of this message's legitimacy. The closest we have to corroboration is from Rosanna Pansino, who claimed to have been warned by similar sources. I have heard rumors from people working close with MrBeast that he is hiring PIs to investigate those speaking up against him. I now have confirmation from several people that individuals are indeed being offered money to fabricate stories about me and others. I have identified some of these people already. They began harassing my friends as of last weekend. I am keeping all of the receipts. If all that wasn't strange enough, the Kris Tyson leaks were taken down by a third party, although the exact reason is unclear. GitHub states it was removed for violating their terms for additional products and features. This is a good time to dive into the sheer amount of censorship of the leaking MrBeast ship, as it seems their main goal was to mitigate the controversy from spreading as quietly as possible. The heavy moderation started at the beginning of the most recent controversy, with the MrBeast subreddit banning any discussion of the new Kris Tyson accusations. This continued as people discovered her Shadman Poster in several videos. The footage was edited out using YouTube's editor, and they began striking down re-uploads of the clip. MrBeast also deleted the streams criticized in Dawson's video. These changes were noticed by the comments, which were flooded with references to the scandals. That changed after MrBeast released a new video on August 3rd. Now, I think we can all admit that the number of people aware of the backlash are outnumbered by the sheer size of his audience. However, many noticed that when sorting by new comments critical of MrBeast, they were disappearing. This would end up being documented in a video by Upper Echelon.
This right here is the 36-hour period of time where the comment section of that latest video was scraped repeatedly and archived. Green is the total number of comments posted. Red is the total number of comments allowed to remain on the video actively. Over that one single 36-hour period from August 4th to midway through August 5th, over 26,000 comments were deleted at a consistent rate, as well as in two very large major batches. In addition, we can infer a couple of things from this graph, such as the usage of automatic filters.
The video goes on to showcase that MrBeast was unlisting and deleting many more videos than people realized.
Here's a complete list of the edits made to the MrBeast videos over the past couple of months for anyone curious to go look for themselves. This is all the stuff they're trying to hide on a plate for you. This one is funny, by the way, in a very twisted sense of the word. I spent 24 hours straight in prison challenge. And then a part where he asks Kris Tyson, if you were to ever go to jail, what would it be for? Which is an odd thing to go back and edit 6 years later. But I think you're starting to get the point.
It's a long-standing tradition to measure outrage through dislikes. While the public's ability to see this was removed, many have turned to add-ons for a similar effect. This led detractors to claim that MrBeast's latest video had over 500,000 dislikes. The problem with these add-ons, though, is that they have a huge margin of error, only extrapolating the amount of dislikes based off of people who have the app installed. MrBeast's team would end up providing none other than Drama Alert with the supposed real numbers, purportedly having only 4,000 dislikes on the actual upload. This changed to 20,000 dislikes 8 hours later. Now, this presents a different question entirely. If we're to take this at face value, that means despite the scandal, it was receiving less dislikes than the channel average. The creator of the add-on would end up stepping forward to dispute this himself. While the total amount was inaccurate, he said that he could confirm 87,000 users disliked the video. Wherever the blame lied, he felt that the numbers in the screenshot were simply impossible. But this all fell to the wayside as Dogpack teased his next installment. The second part of Dogpack's series was released on August 7th, 2024. The premiere saw over 50,000 watching live, although it proved more controversial than his last. The video starts with a Content Cop-inspired sketch, which introduces its main subject, Jake Weddle. He reached out to Dawson, who drove straight to New York overnight for an interview. The bulk of the content in this video is his testimony, which I'll try to summarize as best I can. However, there are a few things worth noting beforehand. Dawson alludes to more serious allegations which apparently led MrBeast's secret CEO to pester them for answers.
Also, I know MrBeast's secret CEO has been practically like harassing my people on, hey, what's in part 2? What does he know? So I will just tell you, James, what will be in part 3, so you don't have to harass my people. It will be about serious allegations of sexual misconduct in the company and your direct involvement in covering up those crimes.
He then alleged female contestants of the 100 Boys vs. Girls video were uncomfortable after a cameraman kept on flirting with them. This is extrapolated to place responsibility on the whole MrBeast team, which does seem unfair given the evidence. This leads to his interview with Weddle, who worked both on screen and behind the scenes at MrBeast. While he only had positive things to say about Jimmy in the past, it was apparently out of fear of being blacklisted in the industry. Weddle began working for the company in 2019, having been brought on as a writer. He showed up in numerous videos until being let go in late 2020. This came after a dispute over wages. He felt it was unfair another writer wasn't getting paid as much, despite having a kid. They tried to take a stand, only for both of them to get fired and given severance. However, Weddle was later invited back to participate in videos in 2021.
That's why you keep nice publicly. If you're nice in public, hey, Jake was nice in public, let's have him back for something. Yeah, sure. So I was hoping they'd call back,
While Jake appeared in a couple videos after, the interview mostly centers around one that never came out. In early 2022, MrBeast uploaded $10,000 every day you survive in prison. The premise generated a lot of controversy, with many questioning the effects it could have on someone's mental health. What nobody realized at the time is that this was actually the second attempt, with the first being done by Jake. The original attempt lacked many of the safeguards they would end up learning from its failure. Now, already this idea is comparable to solitary confinement. The contestant is given no sense of time and cameras are on 24/7. However, the conditions got so bleak, several editors told Weddle it could be turned into a horror film.
I had editors coming up to me saying, "You good, bud?" And I was like, "Yeah, why? You're clearly unwell." And he goes, "Well, because the footage you're sending in is haunting."
The first major issue is that they didn't give him nighttime hours. They refused to turn off the lights, arguing it would ruin the time-lapse shots.
I just wanted to turn the lights off. And I'm vocalizing to people, I wish the lights would turn off. And I go up to my friend, my good friend. And I go, "They're not turning the lights off." He goes, "What? That's a war crime."
It's worth mentioning in later attempts, contestants had access to sunlight while Jake was simply given melatonin. He speculates this could have caused his later insomnia. While he tried to keep going, he broke after 23 days. That's because he was woken up by Jimmy holding 2 briefcases. The second contained a cash prize for if he was able to solve a Rubik's Cube and complete a 22.6-kilometer marathon. He was instructed to run on a treadmill until Jimmy returned, which apparently lasted 3 hours.
Oh, the blisters I had on my feet were like, you wouldn't believe, just all over, just these big red. I couldn't walk.
This is when he tapped out and was finally allowed to sleep with the lights off. They eventually brought Jimmy in alongside his friends, who came to make sure he was okay. That's when he got up and apparently said this.
He says, as if rehearsed by his lawyers. "Yeah, your mental health's the most important thing. Just want to make sure you're okay. And the last thing we want you to do is..." I can almost hear the word Sue come out of his mouth. The S. He just stopped right before I got out.
Jake would end up leaving with about $100,000, having to pay $44K in taxes. This marked the last time he was involved with MrBeast in any official capacity. While most of this recount is just his words, there are messages dated shortly after that show the details have stayed consistent over the years. While that concludes his testimony, there are still other parts of the video worth discussing. Dawson calls MrBeast a sociopath.
When you're watching a video and he's like, "Oh, stop, you're gonna make me cry." And he touches his eye or whatever as if he's crying. He's just...
To anticipate those saying he could have just left, he shows excerpts from an internal document for MrBeast's production team.
Specifically on page 19, there's a paragraph called "No does not mean no." Already insane, because it seems to be co-opting the popular anti-rape slogan.
They then discuss sexual misconduct at the company, which leads to the final bombshell of the video, that MrBeast hired a convicted sex offender. Jake explains that there was a manager at the company that was on the registry for a crime against an underage child. He appeared in this video wearing a mask to obfuscate his identity. They were given a strange nickname.
But when I was there, they called him Delaware.
Dawson further alleged the MrBeast team was trying to expunge Delaware's record off the registry, which sparked someone to record this leaked phone call. The audio is honestly terrible, so I'm just going to read out a few excerpts. Delaware was a hustler, dude. Like, completely honest with you, he was a hustler. If there was any money to be made, Jimmy didn't care about who was taking it. It was Reed's idea to get him fired. If you were going to do anything and get affidavits and testimonials from people, you'd have to move very quickly, because one of those people is going to go back and tell Jimmy. Now, before we go any further, it would be a good idea to digest all of the info that has come out about this so-called Delaware. At this point in the drama, so much was coming out at once, it was hard to tell what was happening. So to back up, this ex-manager was identified as 36-year-old Charles Robert Jefferson. He was convicted in 2010 for sexual assaulting a 1 to 11-year-old. The crime took place around 2004 as he was 16 when it occurred. It wasn't long until online sleuths found his Facebook account, with curious posts around the exact time he was accused. Ever known someone who needed to be hit by a bus and then blow up? I sure as hell do. Something happy. I was told to write this because I want certain people to die. What is on your mind? Well, let's see. Nah, I'm not gonna put that on Facebook. I could get in trouble. This is dated April 20th, the literal day before he was convicted. I have to go back to Delaware tonight. Yay! Not. Please shoot me. He then spent the next week pining over going back to North Carolina. This is where sleuths found an even stranger connection. Charles was friends with Kris back in 2010, and they worked at Best Buy together for the next half a decade. This is actually how he got hired by MrBeast. When Jimmy's channel took off, he always went to that store as Kris's old pal prioritized the YouTuber.
Never watched, you need to, it's awesome. Everything they do is for a great cause. MrBeast, I want my free shirt.
It wasn't until an altercation with their previous manager that they ended up hiring him in early 2018. The first account of this is from Matt Turner, the editor that tried to speak out all those years ago. Turner explained their old manager, Dan, had a 5-year-old son. He alleged Kris, Jimmy, and others frequently made sexual jokes about the manager's kid. It eventually became too much, and Dan lashed out while they were playing Fortnite in the middle of the ocean.
And one too many jokes got said, and bro flipped. Like, understandably, he couldn't take it anymore, and he took a cameraman and he threw him into the water, and it was a whole big problem. And so then the next day, he was fired. Delaware came in a week later, and it's so funny how this same environment that we're around kids all the time, that's his fan base, and then he brings in Delaware. There's this fostered environment with Lolly that they all think is so funny, and it's like the combination that doesn't sit very well when you add all three of those things up.
This is reiterated by Delaware's brother-in-law, Jake the Viking, who got hired a few months after.
They had to fire their manager for an altercation that took place on a boat. I think it was like the Fortnite in the middle of the ocean video.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, because he like pushed someone into the water. He pushed Turner or someone in. And when they did, they had to fire him for basically assault at work. And then when they did that, they asked my brother-in-law to come on to be their manager.
While Jake became the on-camera personality, Delaware stayed behind the scenes, aside from a few notable exceptions. In November of 2018, MrBeast uploaded, destroyed friend's house and bought him a new one. That friend was none other than the registered sex offender, meaning he got a home renovation through the company. The thumbnail bizarrely has these little spirals which resemble a symbol conspiracy theorists point out is used by pedophiles.
How do you feel of the way your house looks?
Yeah.
I mean, you knew about this. So
I knew about it.
But
There's
how
a
do you...
difference
between
knowing and seeing. Yeah, like I knew there was going to be things done, but
not
to what level I had no clue.
What's interesting about these early appearances is that he's completely unmasked. The only time he wears one is in the Insane Asylum video from February 2019. This appears to be his last appearance, as shortly after MrBeast signed with the Night Media. That's also likely when he was let go, if we're to believe the leaked phone call attributing that decision to Reed. In the aftermath of Dogpack's second video, many began to scrutinize Jake the Viking and his brother-in-law, and for good reason. When the accusations against Kris Tyson surfaced, Jake made tweets like this. Jimmy knew, no accountability, none. The silence is deafening. It just keeps getting worse. If things couldn't get any weirder, he actually fought with Kris back in June, which led her to say this. Never ask Jake how he protected his kid or his family from his brother-in-law. Who you keep in your company describes a lot about you. The tweet has what we now know is a screenshot of Delaware's sex offender registry. It's all just baffling given the context. Like, there's easily a scenario where Kris knew Delaware longer than Delaware knew Jake, yet they're all fighting who is the most complicit, as Jimmy took on most of the heat. Whatever the case may be, Jake would end up issuing a public statement standing by his sister's husband. Here's the truth. Yes, Delaware is my brother-in-law. Yes, he is a registered sex offender. When he was 21, a 16-year-old accused him and others of SA when she was 11. Delaware took a plea deal. That's why there was no jail time. But he still had to register. Jake denied the supposed reason behind Delaware's nickname, and it's worth noting he used it while he still was at Best Buy. He then confirms Jimmy was aware of his criminal record. Before being hired, Delaware sat down with Jimmy and Sue, Jimmy's mom, and explained to them everything. So yes, Jimmy knew, but again, this incident happened in 2010. Delaware was hired in 2017-2018. Delaware was also let go from the company before I was. He claims Delaware's charges were set to be dropped this fall. He emphasized how amazing of a husband he's been to his sister, as well as a father to his 2 nieces. I understand why anyone would be upset and frustrated over these allegations, and I do not blame them. Hurting kids in any way is completely unacceptable. But in the case of Delaware, I firmly believe he did nothing wrong and look forward to the day these charges are dropped. When people began pointing out his blatant hypocrisy, the Viking seemed to contradict himself by admitting Delaware had, in fact, done something wrong. He doubled down after this, stating, I believe he did nothing wrong because of how easy it is for a girl to cry wolf. Seen it dozens of times in the sports world. It's strange he insisted on them being false allegations when taking a plea deal strongly implies otherwise. The ordeal spiraled into its own drama, where Jake apparently flew out one of Kris Tyson's accusers to meet Delaware when he was 17. But it was a very brief interaction, so the story didn't really go anywhere. This all took place right as MrBeast announced his new toy line, Beast Labs, which is probably the worst timing he could have ever imagined. Jimmy still had yet to respond publicly, as people turned to the creators around him for answers. Ludwig would end up dropping Feastables as a sponsor from his upcoming event, giving up $100,000 in the process.
And so it was inked. We were supposed to do it. I called him and I said 2 things. 1, when are you going to reply? And he echoed what was said in the Dogpack video, which is when everything comes out, he's going to make 1 reply as opposed to a reply after every single video. So we'll see when that happens.
MrBeast's girlfriend, Thea Biosin, replied to one user, half the things that are said are not true. I wouldn't be with him if they were. This implied half the things being said were true, which certainly didn't make things better. The most interestingly, however, was from Chucky, who responded to Dawson in a DM after ignoring him for weeks. Hey, the company takes these claims extremely seriously. This is Stephanie. She works at Quinn Emanuel, the company we hired to do an independent investigation, and she asked if you could send over anything to help with the investigation. If it wasn't clear before, it was now certain that MrBeast and his team were sweating. When Dawson first shared his cease and desist, he hid the law firm, though people were still able to trace it back as he used an excerpt from their website. Our white-collar criminal defense practice is second to none. The source, as it turns out, was the largest litigation and arbitration firm in the world, Quinn Emanuel. The full document was leaked to the Daily Mail, who revealed it was written by celebrity lawyer Alex Spiro. His current rate is $2,000 per hour. The attorney's former clients include Elon Musk, Megan Thee Stallion, and Alec Baldwin in his recent involuntary manslaughter case. The cease and desist has alleged details about Dawson's firing from the company. You have no understanding of the inner workings of MrBeast, given you only spent 3 weeks at the company on a trial basis before you were fired for conduct even you have characterized as inappropriate. You did not make it to the end of your 90-day trial period without repeatedly ignoring your supervisor, then attempting to secretly spend company resources on something you described as a toy. During your brief period at MrBeast, you sought to attribute your inappropriate conduct to programming, from being raised with access to an iPad and bad mental health. On your last day at MrBeast in April, the day you were fired, you pleaded for your job back, insisting MrBeast was a place you wanted to work. Unlike the narratives you spun to cast yourself as the victim when being terminated for conduct that at a minimum demonstrates a lack of judgment, your communicated desire to be a part of MrBeast remained unchanged over the course of that nearly hour-long meeting. This raised a lot of questions about the ex-employee's past and potential motives for speaking out. He would end up responding to this claim in a video by X8. For his part, Dawson clarified the toy was an Apple Vision Pro. He claimed it was suggested by the company, although he tried to buy it instead of a monitor and got berated afterward. Dawson denied ignoring his supervisor on purpose, but said he was left unsupervised for a week. He also alleged his inappropriate conduct was simply not being a yes man. He did confess that he begged for his job back. I didn't know they recorded that meeting, but yeah, I was at a low point. I did not want to get fired. I worked hard to get there and felt I was being fired for BS. Going back to the law firm, Alex Spiro is apparently heading the company's internal audit. This was first discussed in an email obtained by Drama Alert. The memo outlined several steps they were taking, like mandatory training on sexual harassment. Jimmy also commits to changing and improving his leadership style and seems to take responsibility. However, this memo being leaked at all would end up under scrutiny. On August 12th, the good old Rosanna revealed MrBeast hired Matthew Hiltzick's crisis management company. Matthew began his PR career at Miramax under Harvey Weinstein. This came shortly before the memo was leaked, which she alleged was a strategic move to rebuild Jimmy's public image.
I've actually heard from pretty credible people that this email was not leaked, so, why lie about it? Devious or deceptive tendencies. Here he is quoted in that Rolling Stone article saying, "I'm great at lying."
He was named in a lawsuit by Weinstein's victims accusing his lawyers of using deceptive tactics to obtain evidence. In October 2017, Weinstein's attorneys Benjamin Brafman and Alex Spiro used deceptive tactics to cause Thompson to believe that Brafman and Spiro were working for the victims in order to entice her to turn over her visual and audio evidence of Weinstein's actions, which she did. She did not learn that Brafman was actually Weinstein's attorney until after turning over the evidence in her possession. However, Brafman's firm denied Spiro's association to the case. It's unclear what the end of all this will be, and given what Dawson's facing, it's hard not to wonder how he's so confident in not being sued. Don't really care to filter everything I say through lawyers and PR people. Sometimes I say dumb shit, but my video was well researched. To be completely fair, hiring a PR specialist best known for defending a monster doesn't make someone bad at their job, and these could very well be good business decisions. But I can't help but add, if the goal is to save your reputation, going the million-dollar lawyer route probably isn't the best way to do it. Whatever the case, how this will end up panning out for the company's most outspoken critics remain to be seen. Rosanna Pansino is a name that comes up numerous times in this video, so I thought it would be a good idea to give a rundown of who she is and why she's so invested in Jimmy's downfall. The YouTuber is known for her baking content, although she's been in the entertainment industry for at least a decade. Her connection to MrBeast begins with Creator Games 1 and 2, which were digital due to the pandemic. That changed in 2021 when she was invited in person for the third installment. This would become the video, Extreme $1 Million Hide and Seek. Upon its release though, Rosanna was dismayed to find herself edited out. The results were altered to show her eliminated early on despite having made it to the top 3. He edited the video to look like the final 3 people were Larry, Logan Paul, and Zach King. The final 3 people were actually Zach, Quackity, and myself.
Another question that I got was, well, why didn't you reach out to him privately?
What does it matter if you reach out to him privately? Is my question.
The video was public.
Yeah.
I found out when it went public, and he didn't have the decency to contact me privately and tell me, hey, just to let you know, to make the video more entertaining, we cut you out.
While she received support from H3H3, the public largely sided against her at the time. The drama ended with her deleting all of her posts and issuing an apology for making things public. As you can imagine, she felt vindicated when allegations of Jimmy rigging contests went mainstream. This allowed her to air out another problem she had, that he got many creators, including herself, to use a management company he didn't disclose he owned. That shady practice became worse when it randomly shut down, locking many of them out of their accounts. What must be understood is that Rosanna has a lot of connections in this sphere. Her sources include friends who work for MrBeast, which means she's able to share otherwise behind-the-scenes info. That notably includes releasing the full How to Succeed at MrBeast document. Her investigative reporting hit another level though when MrBeast's Amazon show started to film, which turned into a whole new fiasco in and of itself. The next saga began all the way back in March of 2024, when Amazon announced Beast Games, where 1,000 contestants would compete for a $5 million grand prize. This is likely the single largest payout in TV history.
This show, we have it written now, is mind-blowing.
Amazon reportedly paid $100 million for the show, giving up full creative control and approval over sponsors to win the competitive bidding process. Beast Games was meant to boost Prime Video, which desperately needed a big hit. There was a lot banking on its success, which Jimmy acknowledged in an interview.
If this flops, then people are gonna be like, yeah, YouTubers aren't capable of, making it on streaming platforms. And I recognize it could either have a massive positive effect and that every streaming platform is going to be throwing deals left and right at creators, or a negative effect and people are going to go, if Jimmy couldn't make a hit show, what makes you think you can?
The first series of competitions took place at the Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. The show was structured in a way that meant this shoot was actually for the MrBeast channel. While the promo material claimed there would be 1,000 contestants, those who flew in arrived to find 2,000. This meant it was now the largest game show ever produced. They planned to narrow down the pool until only half remained. That of course felt unfair to people who didn't want to compete against twice as many people as they were promised originally. It's worth mentioning a local outlet found this ad offering locals $150 to participate in physical challenges at the stadium that day. The 3-day production began on July 17, 2024. They instructed players to wear garbage bags outside the arena to keep things under wraps. This was only the beginning though, as reports emerged of contestants being carried out in stretchers, as well as severe hospitalizations. What the is going on, MrBeast? Lost medication, injuries, running out of food, dehydration, lost undergarments, no hygiene products, hospital evacuations, etc.? I'm hearing similar stories. Many women and elderly report being physically assaulted. People not receiving medications, multiple seizures, broken bones, people in severe psychological distress. There were so many details emerging from contestants, staff, and local hospitals, it was difficult to keep track of, until the New York Times published their own article on the subject on August 9th. This would be the most comprehensive recount of the first 3-day shoot. Jimmy styled himself as the game master from Squid Game, down to the guards dressed in black flanking the field. Contestants described how he stepped out of a shrine-like structure and onto a platform above $5 million in cash as they were instructed to cheer. "We're all just looking up at the sky, screaming at him like he's God," one contestant said. The pile of cash was on display during the entire event, all in $1 bills. The competitors varied in age, with one apparently being 82 years old. Before they arrived, they were instructed to turn in all their belongings, including medication. This proved to be a serious issue later on. There were numerous reports of contestants being underfed, with long stretches that lasted over 20 hours. Those with allergies or dietary restrictions faced even more difficulty. Even though they filled a form detailing their needs, they were often served food they were allergic to. They were then not provided alternatives. Most estimated being fed sporadically and twice a day. Of course, the one exception to this was when they got MrBeast candy bars. On a few occasions, the production staff passed around small Feastables chocolate bars, a brand created by Mr. Donaldson, and filmed some people eating and praising the candy, contestants said. And somehow this was only the start of their claims about the conditions. When people sought help from staff, they were repeatedly unhelpful or disorganized. There were also reports of withholding women's underwear, which led to some crazy thumbnails. One woman said that when she and a group of contestants who were menstruating during the event had asked the production staff about getting their underwear more quickly, she had been told that it was, quote, not a medical emergency, and she recalled that a nearby member of the production staff had laughed at the women's pleading. According to Rosanna, several contestants never got their underwear back. This is all without talking about the actual challenges themselves. The first challenge had 5 teams of 400 pulling ropes attached to 10,000-pound weights as fast as possible. The way they were divided resulted in one team being predominantly women. One contestant said she had left the stadium bruised and bleeding after being injured and eliminated in the first challenge. Vital Vegas reported on claims that the rules against pushing, shoving, and tackling were not enforced. Each challenge catered to young, strong men who bullied female and elderly contestants and ultimately took away any chance of a fair competition. Rosanna claimed that the male contestants on Beast Games were not eliminated for violence. The shoot finished after the filming of 4 total games. This concluded the first stage of the competition. The 1,000 participants that remained moved on to the next in Toronto, Canada. With all these reports coming out, it was only a matter of time before MrBeast camp issued a response. They first said it was complicated by the CrowdStrike incident, which led 8.5 million Windows computers to crash. The statements also blame extreme weather. They later told the New York Times that a formal review was initiated to ensure they learn from this experience. That being said, their rep insisted contestants were offered 3 meals a day. Eventually, their hired PR expert Matthew Hiltzik said to Business Insider, "Only a handful of people were injured and blamed a lot of execution problems on local staff in Vegas hired to handle shooting for the show." If you'll recall, Amazon gave MrBeast and his team a full creative control. There was a lot riding on its success. It was supposed to kickstart their ad sales, as they were in the process of getting $10 million sponsorships. That, of course, was affected by all the negative PR, with some reportedly getting cold feet. There were talks of pushing back the still unrevealed release date, and one insider claimed producers considered a Fire Festival-like documentary about the failure. It then surfaced that a man was allowed to compete despite prior charges of battering, kidnapping, pandering, and robbery. The convict was allegedly kicked off set after inappropriate behavior. This is where things sat for a while until a class action lawsuit was filed against both MrBeast and Amazon. It was brought forth by 5 contestants who alleged chronic mistreatment and neglect. As of writing, the full complaint is not public yet, with many details being redacted. From what we know now, their claims include failure to prevent sexual harassment. It also claims that contestants were misclassified as volunteers to secure a $2.25 million tax credit. They are seeking expenses, alleged unpaid wages, and unspecified punitive damages. With the company's background checks already in question and the inability to handle these record-breaking logistics, what the future holds for Beast Games remains to be seen. The most recent accusation came from a cinematographer who claimed to have witnessed a rape on set. However, there is so far no evidence to substantiate this claim, and he has since clarified he was not accusing MrBeast in particular, but the company they hired to build the set. Now, before we go any further, it would be beneficial to discuss Kris Tyson's marriage. This is important for the next section, so bear with me. Before transitioning, Kris described himself as a country boy. This likely played a role in meeting his now ex-wife, Katie. While not much is known about her, she's said to be quite religious, with the two dating for 7 years. During this time frame, he left comments on Reddit about how his girlfriend didn't want to have sex until marriage. "I have a girlfriend and we are saving sex till marriage. More of her choice, but we still do each other sexual favors. I've noticed that her jerking me while she's completely naked it doesn't do much, and I have to think about this crazy porn scenarios in my head, and then I find myself finishing to that and actually not her. Yeah, me and her have had that argument several times. I've tried a number of things to convince her, but I don't want to pressure her. We are 19 and 20, and she comes from an extremely religious background. I'm religious, but still asking questions like most people would." The couple got married in 2018, and Katie gave birth to their son Tucker on June 8, 2020. Kris was active on TikTok at the time, and made several videos before and after he was born.
Hey Katie, guess what? You're officially a MILF.
It was about 6 months after having a son that Kris came out as bisexual. His tweet explains he'd like to go into detail, but he had to stay private about it due to things that happened when he tried coming out. While this is just an allegation, Nathan claimed to have seen proof Kris was sleeping with other men whilst engaged.
So to be clear, he was talking about sleeping with other men as they were engaged before they got married?
Yeah, not directly to me. I mean, he would make jokes about it to me, but there were other people who kind of came forward / showed us messages of him talking about sleeping with other men.
So he was cheating on his fiance before they got married. Okay.
Yeah.
Following Kris's transition, her relationship to her family was often a point of contention. Then on March 23, 2023, Kris admitted they'd been separated for a little over a year and were finalizing things. She declined to elaborate further. We like to keep our personal lives private, which a lot of people don't understand because we share so much, but this is the only time I want to discuss it. However, in a leaked DM to some ordinary gamers, Kris alleged trolling led her to no longer be on speaking terms with her family. So glad you said there's legit info on Kiwi. Legit being people telling people to go to my house and kill me. That website is the reason my child has had a gun pointed at him by cops. While from what I can tell there's been no official proof any swatting occurred, it was apparently the reason she had to move, implying Kris was forced to move out on bad terms. The couple previously bought a house together, which seems to imply Katie ended up getting the home. It's also curious Jake the Viking claimed their divorce came right as Kris was about to get more money.
And big news bomb. Apparently, I was being told from a very reliable source, his percentage of ownership was about to drastically increase after his divorce with Katie went through.
From what it's worth, Katie did once issue a statement to defend Kris from online criticism. Our lives are the best they've ever been, and Tucker is loved and cared for by both parents and in both homes, and is thriving. Her only response so far to the more recent scandals has been a vague post on Instagram. As bad as you want to address it, sometimes it's best to let God defend you. He saw too. The attitude from Kris's sister was much more blunt. I'm his sibling. He, and yes, I use the correct pronoun, told me that he got fully aroused when he secretly stole my female clothes and put them on. He's deluded and disturbed, and it's 100% a fetish. He's narcissistic, and professionals have told him he needs a full psych eval. With all the scandals circling around the MrBeast crew, it's been difficult to discuss everything as it's happened. On July 27, 2024, a user named Mooskina stepped forward with her own claims. I was sexually assaulted by Ava Tyson, and here is my story. For context, Ava and I are both adults and met each other as adults. The story begins in November of 2022, when Jess shared photos of her transition on Twitter. Kris was impressed and followed her account. They began talking in private, which is when the cast member confided she was planning to transition. The two started messaging regularly, which led Jess to ask about potentially working for MrBeast. Kris seemed open to the idea. They switched over to Snapchat after a few weeks, as well as video calls over Discord. While their interaction seemed platonic at first, that quickly changed. They allegedly began masturbating on calls together, with one instance ending with Jess puking while sick. I always felt like I had to say yes if I wanted to be in a video or get a job. Our conversations always leaned in the direction of affectionate and sexual, and she sent me a lot of sexually explicit Snapchats, messages, photos, and videos. This led Kris to buy her a one-way ticket to her home in Greenville in April of 2023. The first night at her house, she told me to set up in her bedroom as I would be sleeping in there with her. When we went to bed together that night, we ended up cuddling and kissing, which led to her taking her clothes off and asking for oral sex from me. Jess alleges this continued over the course of the next week, with Kris never reciprocating any sexual favors in return. This took place the same week Kris publicly shared she was on HRT. After making her post, Jimmy called her later that night while Ava was receiving oral sex from me. She answered the phone and had that conversation with Jimmy while I continued to perform oral on her. I was again now given access to very private information, which made me feel special, something that happened consistently throughout our relationship. While there, Jess learned Kris did not actually have the ability to cast anyone in a MrBeast video. This led her to fly back home. They remained in contact, although she did not receive the same level of attention and affection as before. Shortly after, Kris went on a work trip to Japan, which did not go as expected. This actually relates to a different scandal, which again requires context. That trip in Tokyo is rather infamous due to a photo of Kris hanging out with Finster and a pornographer named John Hollywood. John was directly implicated in a Discord server where pedophilic material was shared. This circle, run by a certain giggly goon clown, praised the idea of, quote, early porn introduction, which attempts to groom kids by showing it to them as early as possible. It's also relevant to note that John is also trans, and one of the recurring themes in the server was convincing kids to take estrogen. Of course, this doesn't mean that Kris was directly associated with any of these people beyond having met John in real life. When this information surfaced, Kris claimed she had no idea who John was and threw Finster under the bus. I invited the person I was kind of friends with because they had just started HRT and I also had a crush on them. They asked if they could bring a friend. I met that person maybe 3 times total before I realized they were into each other, and I left because I felt I had been used for a free date to Japan, and kind of was left as a third wheel. Jess corroborates that Kris was upset and flew back early from her trip. This apparently led her to get offered a job as the MrBeast employee's live-in assistant. During this trial period in her employment, Jess continued to give oral sex. This led her to start feeling coerced, so she tried to avoid any physical engagement. Then, on July 29th, Kris apparently began masturbating in front of her unprompted. This allegedly made her feel pressured to provide sexual favors. I had just moved in with Ava and left my job to come work as her assistant. In no way, shape, or form did I feel like I could say no without somehow risking my job or being asked to leave. They would have a conversation about this on August 3rd, with Jess expressing she was being put in uncomfortable situations and felt empty and used. Kris responded by stating that was also her opinion all along. They agreed to not have sex anymore, but allegedly still engaged in other intimate acts like groping and cuddling in the same bed. Jess provides screenshots of Kris flirting to corroborate this. They eventually hooked up one more time in December, with mixed signals the whole way through. Whenever I became emotional or had an issue with how Ava was treating me, it was always turned around on me, and I was made to believe that if I didn't stop acting that way, or prove that I was okay with everything, that I should move out and not be her assistant anymore. However, this fell apart in March of 2024 when Kris began seeing someone else. They began having a lot of fights, which led Jess to move out in the beginning of June. This was allegedly under the agreement she would keep her job as a hybrid travel/remote position. That changed after she got home, with Kris already working on replacing her. These messages are interesting as there appears to be some excerpts alluding to Kris's marriage. The anxiety I feel about this situation reminds me of whenever Redacted would get mad at me while I was at work and say I was choosing work over her. I'm probably going to let Redacted continue working with me until I can get the divorce settled, and then I'm going to try and look into getting an executive assistant who can be here with me and focuses solely on improving my mental health. While she felt forced out of the position, she tried to navigate things amicably. Kris claimed to be keeping the company updated and that someone would talk to her about severance. You're still employed and I haven't even talked to anyone about it yet, but I'll keep you up to date on the process. Between us, James is going to use company leverage to get me someone who can basically pick my life up and help me get it back moving. Until I begin the process, you will be on pay. I'm going to push for them to give you severance. When this didn't happen, Jess asked for updates on her employment. In July, Jess was able to get in contact with HR where she planned to report Kris for sexual assault. Kris found out about this and sent "Wow Jess" before blocking her on everything. This is when she learned Kris lied and told them she'd resigned of her own free will. They were also only informed that very week. It became clear Kris had not been forthcoming about anything that transpired during the course of her employment. A few days later, MrBeast launched a third-party investigation into the matter. Jess claimed to have provided chat log screenshots as well as a list of witnesses in the company. As of writing, she still hasn't heard anything back. The decision to go public came in light of the then recent Shadman scandal, which she'd been unaware of. This would end up overshadowing her accusations, with neither MrBeast or Kris issuing a public response. And I think that no matter where you land on the larger accusations here, there was clearly an ethical line being crossed. While Jess's story didn't get as much attention, it was covered by Rolling Stone, who reached out to Tyson for comment. That resulted in a pretty funny interaction. Rolling Stone contacted Tyson over Instagram, X, email, and phone. Tyson and the reporter spoke for about 2 minutes over the phone before she said she would call him back later. The reporter's number was blocked, and she did not reply to an email with a detailed list of questions and allegations. There wouldn't be much in the way of new info until an account began sharing messages from her current partner. Kris's boyfriend was a Minecraft YouTuber named Eret, who got big off the Dream SMP. They streamed together in the past, although most had no idea they were dating. This recontextualized a post he made defending her early on, dismissing it as edgy jokes. On August 12th, an anonymous user began posting leaks they received from a mod on the Minecraft YouTuber's Discord. These messages provided insight as to what was going on behind the scenes, and what Kris's defense was like in private. Beast has asked me not to talk about a lot of this publicly, as they are terrified of inflaming a situation that could anger their corporate investors. He claimed Kris had been the target of coordinated attack videos. Many of the ideas in this recount have been refuted, like Kris supposedly not knowing the age of Lava GS. Nathan and Lava both called this a flat-out lie, as well as the notion she deleted the server upon finding out. The narrative completely ignores the other minors present, which goes unaddressed. Tyson's boyfriend says, "I know Ava wishes that she had never engaged with Shadman, but so many of the YouTubers she looked up to at the time were friends with him or at least engaged with Shad's content." I think it should be noted here that there is a huge difference between people who laughed at Shad's memes and people that paid for his lolly artwork. That doesn't absolve the former group entirely, but it's different as Kris engaged with several other lolicon artists. She would never make that same mistake, especially now that she is a parent as of 2020. What more can she do to allow her to move on from her past mistakes? The next section disputes Jesse's retailing of events. Kris apparently wanted to help Jess out by getting her a job and insurance through MrBeast. Jess professed her love a few times, but Kris turned her down as she saw her like a sister and wanted nothing romantic. This made her very jealous when the two began dating. He shares a DM conversation where Jess called Kris the most important in her life. He explains his views of Jess's departure, calling it abrupt and that she essentially quit. The Minecrafter then confirms there was an ongoing third-party HR investigation. As it turns out, Kris wanted to respond to all this, but couldn't as MrBeast hoped things would simmer down and go away. Eret claimed to have posted that first apology for her under immense pressure from higher-ups. I had changed the password to Kris's Twitter to help her quit it. It had been entirely written by the MrBeast execs under the insane pressure of Amazon and other corporate investors. The previous week, the first recording attempt for the MrBeast Amazon show with 2,000 contestants was a failure which would have been millions thrown away. These accusations hitting directly after the whole project got destroyed made the investors terrified, and they basically forced Jimmy to kick her out as they considered her guilty until proven innocent. I had protested at how terrible the tweet was and asked if it would be possible to change some words like, "if I offended," and the word "permanently." But in the room with Jimmy, the MrBeast CEO, MrBeast COO, and Kris, I was told, "No, we cannot change it. We have run it by the investors. We need to say that." And with no other option, I posted the tweet. Jimmy and the CEO had tears in their eyes. They left soon after. The MrBeast team apparently later regretted this decision, citing it as a knee-jerk reaction. However, corporate investors did not want Kris to have any social media presence for a number of years. The revelation Jimmy was in tears and didn't want to fire his oldest friend was shocking to many people. It quickly got picked up by Drama Alert, although they weren't sure of its veracity. That changed once Mooskina confirmed the DMs shown between her and Eret were legitimate. Jess disputed many of his claims, showing she paid for her own insurance. Eret, can you tell me what your point is by saying I was paid very well? Also, you know MrBeast paid me, right? Maybe next time reach out and talk to a victim of SA before posting lies in an attempt to discredit them. The next day, Eret announced that he wouldn't be streaming. That's when more messages emerged of him defending Kris. This led people to dig through his past, finding a concerning amount of references to Lolly. He later claimed that these were about a group on VR chat called Lolly Squad. The pressure was clearly mounting, but it seemed like things were about to resolve when he reached out to Jess in private. He apologized, admitting to not knowing the full details. While she initially accepted, that changed after a back and forth where he said this: "In reality, I am outside the situation, and the statement you highlighted comes with no factual backing." This led her to accuse him of backtracking. Eret and MrBeast want us to believe that her previous statement is something that Eret believed to be true, but never actually happened. Mooskina was frustrated by the lack of updates. The investigation was apparently complete and being reviewed by a new outside law firm. However, when she tried to get a response, they claimed she agreed to post-employment obligations in her transition agreement. This led her to lash out on Twitter and expose the email publicly. "The more you try to hide what happened to me and ignore me, the more it's going to f*** you over." That is sadly where the story remains, with her account ominously set to private shortly after. It's unclear what happened next, what the results were, or if she'll even be able to talk about it publicly again. Okay, with all of that out of the way, we can finally check back on the Dogpack drama. The first significant update came on August 16th. That day, Jake Weddle revealed Jimmy had reached out to make things right. He offered to pay the rest of the prize money and no strings attached. They spoke over the phone, with Jake ultimately accepting $50,000. It's worth noting he was easily the most controversial part of Dawson's second video, with many finding him unlikable. Dawson released his first videos 2 weeks apart, which led him to aim for an August 21st release for the next one. He even put up a poll on if he should drop it that night. This didn't come to fruition, as the video immediately got age restricted and several accusers got cold feet. That meant he had to go through the process of getting it approved by his legal team all over again. With such anticipation for the next video, many looked back at the document he shared for part 1. That's when they noticed a cut segment about Jimmy being the Antichrist. This had been a popular meme for a while. The premise stems from a 4chan post dated January 2023. While it sounds absurd, Dawson alleged many at MrBeast genuinely believed he might be controlled by Satan. This renewed interest led him to share the original segment on Twitter.
"This second beast performed great miracles. It made fire come down out of heaven to earth in the sight of everyone, and it deceived all of the people living on earth by means of the miracles which it was allowed to perform in the presence of the first beast."
Where it gets weird is the fact that Jimmy bought a church early on and turned it into a studio.
To be specific, you're in a church. So when I first started, there's just no warehouses or studios in Greenville, North Carolina. Yeah. So there are a lot of churches, though. We're in the Bible Belt. Yeah. So I bought a church.
An interesting tidbit not a lot of people know about is that Jimmy grew up religious to the point of having scripture in his early banners. He has since publicly distanced himself from Christianity.
Personally, what makes the most sense to me is that the Antichrist would not be a person, but a company. The company of YouTube. Personally, I don't believe any of it literally, except for the fact that I do believe YouTube will cause the death of humanity.
With the most recent outrage persisting for 2 months at this point, there was an entire industry of MrBeast drama videos. Dawson would end up promoting other creators that covered aspects of the story he was interested in but couldn't focus on. The most bizarre was his connection to a video by BJ Investigates called MrBeast the Movie. He was apparently flown out to Louisiana to watch this in a movie theater, enjoying complimentary crawfish and gumbo. It's just a bizarre scenario to imagine. I honestly can't tell if he's joking or not. Did he really watch this on the silver screen? The documentary goes into a lot of aspects of the MrBeast channel many hadn't discussed, with a close examination of his early life. What stood out to me was a memoir Jimmy's mom wrote in 2019. Over the years, many wondered why his dad wasn't in the picture. The YouTuber hasn't spoken much about his childhood, describing most of his life before age 12 as a blur.
I've literally never had anyone ask me about anything before 12. Like, my life basically started when I made my first video. Everything before that it's kind of like a blur in my head.
He also claims not to have any vivid memories of his childhood before the age of 11. The truth, as it turns out, is quite dark, with Rock Bottom and Faithless detailing his mother's recovery from domestic abuse. I ended up buying a copy of the book to read through it myself, and I came out with a lot more empathy for Jimmy and his family. It's a harrowing tale with a shocking amount of tragedy and violence throughout the biggest YouTuber in the world's upbringing. Now, I should clarify, this is all just testimony, but if even a fraction of it were true, it still says a lot. Jimmy's mother, Susan Marie King, was born in 1964. When she was 22, she enlisted into the military, where she met an army officer by the name of Charles Richard Donaldson. He's given the pseudonym Tom throughout the book. Sue had just left college, describing her teen years as terribly sinful. Charles was well respected by their peers. He first noticed the young woman for how much beer she could hold. The two began dating in 1987 and got married by the end of the year. The newlyweds lived in Washington State, buying a house together in the city of Olympia. While they had their fights, he always bought her flowers as an apology. That changed over the course of several years. The couple moved a lot, living in Georgia when CJ was born in 1996. While Charles was quick to show him off, he refused to take on his fatherly duties. That was despite Susan's 12-hour workdays. He turned his back to me and focused on the sports on TV. It didn't matter that I had been up at 5:30 in the morning to get ready for work the next day. I was the one who did all the childcare, all the food shopping, all the cooking and cleaning, all the laundry. And all this in the spite of working full-time. They were stationed in Wichita, Kansas, when she gave birth to Jimmy in 1998. By then, he explicitly told her he would never apologize again. For a couple of years, Jimmy and his brother were moved around to different army institutions before they settled near family in North Carolina. His father grew controlling, barking orders to the point she felt like a slave. He frequently created expensive situations they couldn't afford. That was on top of neglecting his kids. A bad week at work followed by a night out drinking almost always guaranteed he would cancel whatever plans our children had with him on Saturday. Our two little boys never understood. That worsened once she got promoted and outranked him as lieutenant colonel. He belittled her constantly, reiterating she was stupid and incompetent. The arguments escalated to physical abuse and marital rape. All the while, she worked as a warden at the army prison. While she began to understand how wrong it was, she was afraid to report him in fear of jeopardizing his income and benefits. It would uproot everything for her and her two children. This put her in a position where she tried even harder to make him happy. There's a very disturbing story she tells while pregnant with her daughter in March of 2001. Tom came stumbling into the house way past midnight. I was 5 months pregnant with our third child. He didn't care that I hated interacting with him when he was so drunk. That was what he wanted, raw, forceful, fighting back the tears sex. But in trying to steel myself against the pain, I ended up hurting Tom by accident. Swiftly and violently, I was thrown to the floor, with Tom screaming and swearing at me. I crawled to the corner and curled my legs into a fetal position, trying to protect the baby inside of me. This is when Charles began kicking his pregnant wife over and over again until storming out of the bedroom. 3 months later, she was scheduled to move to Germany. He forced her to arrange the entire relocation herself as punishment for the incident. Sue gave birth to their daughter around July of 2001. They moved a few months later, where she served at the only U.S. military prison in Europe at the time.
I ended up being the first female prison warden for the DoD prison over in Heidelberg, Germany.
It's unclear how long this lasted, although it appears they were back in the States when tragedy struck. Their youngest was diagnosed with cancer at just 2 years old. The abuse is said to have increased threefold after this, going from awful to horrific. There was no escape as Charles was their primary insurance provider. While the treatment seemed effective, the leukemia returned a year later, putting their daughter in the ICU. Jimmy's sister had to undergo a bone marrow transplant, and Sue stayed with her in the hospital. This was a safe place, at least physically. He wouldn't hit me here. Besides, his visits were rare. His visits were also obnoxious and hungover, disgusting and volatile, and random, unexpected. But infrequent at least. No one else came at all. What a lonely place. Her daughter subsequently required 25 doses a day to survive. It was around 2006 that Charles took a job 7 hours away. That led to an entire year where he only came home 4 times. This was her first experience being a single mother. The stress led her to beg him not to file a divorce. Eventually, Charles did return and moved back. However, this was short-lived, with the couple separating after a violent altercation that nearly got her killed. Tom gripped my neck in a chokehold, raising me high enough off the floor that my feet dangled freely. Just before I passed out from his grip around my neck, he released me, watching me flop to the ground, gasping for air. Each epithet was punctuated with a kick to my stomach. I curled up into a fetal position and covered my face. "Stay out of my sight," he roared. "You disgust me." He stomped out of the room. This marked the beginning of her escape, which came alongside her retirement from the military. They divorced in 2008, although it took longer to recover from 21 years of abuse. It was only through counseling she began to heal, later being diagnosed with PTSD. My inability to function affected my ability as a mother. I became moody, uninterested, and flat out overwhelmed with every task. My complete ignorance of PTSD and the continued stress I was dealing with robbed me of many mealtime conversations and much enjoyment of my kids. Many of her regrets in not leaving sooner stemmed from how it could have affected her children. I longed to keep my sons from doing to anyone else what was being done to me. If that all wasn't difficult enough, they would end up losing the house in light of the 2008 financial crisis. They had a windfall with her military retirement check, although she had to work a civilian job. Thankfully, her daughter survived cancer, but that still wasn't the end of the family's troubles. Jimmy was now 11 years old, which is when his life stopped being a blur. He was so quiet, many thought he was a mute. The two brothers kept visiting their father, who now lived in a different state with his girlfriend. He would take them to amusement parks, water parks, and all sorts of tourist activities while going to the beach. While this violated their custody agreement, Susan allowed it to happen. They grew disillusioned with their father on their own over time. When all those years of my covering for him stopped, they felt the full weight of disappointment at all his failures. When he was late, when he canceled, and when he didn't follow through on his promises. Jimmy is no longer in contact with his father. It was around this time he started playing baseball, which became his first obsession. Those aspirations were dashed, however, when he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2013. This meant his body lost its ability to hold food. The 15-year-old rapidly lost weight until he could barely get out of bed. It was months before they found a treatment plan, with the pain barring him from his favorite sport. He would end up having to skip school just to lay in bed, which made his life miserable. With all that time at home, this is when he pursued YouTube instead, and the rest, as we know, is history.
We didn't have the best upbringing. Like, my parents were in the military, and I was just raised with my mom, who was always working because we didn't have tons of money. So, like, most of my life, I was just kind of home alone.
Sue now works as his son's chief compliance officer, where she oversees the company's expenditures and contracts. That also includes her son's personal affairs, with Jimmy not having access to his own bank accounts. They've been working together since 2017. Many employees have said she was effectively in charge of human resources, although a spokesperson denied this. This seems problematic given she's admitted it's difficult for her to talk with victims of abuse as the subject is extremely triggering.
Come to find out, I am much better on the support side. I am not able to be really close to victims. Is still extremely too triggering for me, even this far removed. So we've found out now that that's not in my skill set.
I'm going to be honest, with all this often uncited context, it's hard not to change the way you look at Jimmy's life, and why he does what he does. This isn't to offer an excuse, but rather to show how and why the internal culture at the company became the way it did. Her role has been described as similar to her job as a military prison warden.
I don't know about that, but I know she's pretty badass. Like, sometimes, like, when we have a lot of employees and stuff,
she's a little too rough. I'm like, Mom, this isn't the Army. Calm down.
Really?
Yeah.
She'll go all boot camp on him?
Jimmy has explained the reason she got this position is because there weren't many people he could trust. He emphasizes loyalty in this interview, pointing to Kris as an example.
On the topic of trust, like everyone, like Kris, Chandler, all like these people I grew up with.
Chris is great. I like him, by the way. I want to put that on the record.
Yeah. No, he's really good. And I've known him since I was like 12. And so it's just like, he was actually my first subscriber. Then that's what I would recommend though, if people are trying to do what I do. Like, you gotta go to your roots and like hire people you know. Cause like you're getting a random guy in LA, like there's literally like a coin flip that they're just gonna you over one day.
Oh my God.
Because I just wanted loyalty. I'd rather have a guy I can trust for the next 10 years.
It offers a new perspective on the time he helped his brother start up his own spin-off channel, as well as how certain individuals managed to stick around in the company. And that takes us all the way back to Delaware's brother-in-law, Jake the Viking. With pressure mounting over Jake's lackluster responses, many demanded he make another statement. This only got worse once the actual reason he left MrBeast was made public. While Jake previously said it was a mutual departure, this turned out to be a lie. He was actually fired for stealing money from contestants. This was revealed under strange circumstances, though.
Is it true that Jake the Viking was fired because he tried to guilt trip you on another business? Where is you getting your information from? Where is you getting this information from?
This was asked by Captain Howdy, an account seemingly made just for this occasion. It's implied this is top-level information being revealed that very few people should know.
They asked you for any of the when you won? Well, he did ask me for some money. Yeah, he did. I don't know if that's why he got fired or not, but yeah, he did. I gave Jake some of my earnings, but yeah, that's some top information though. I don't know whoever told you that is crazy.
The user went on to post a well-edited video about it that I'm pretty sure uses an AI voiceover.
It's been alleged to us privately by ex-MrBeast employees that the real reason Jake was let go was that he attempted to coerce multiple contestants in this challenge into giving him large chunks of their winnings.
Jake eventually posted a video to his channel which many assumed would address these serious accusations. It was instead disputing a story Weddle shared about him leaving trash in the mountains. To many, it felt like a distraction, taking focus away from Kris or Delaware. It was pretty irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, and it quickly got set to private with the only surviving copy being in a live stream. This, as it turns out, is because the account unintentionally revealed new information that gave a lot of new leads. But to understand how, it gets a little complicated, so bear with me once again. This story starts with the filming of MrBeast's 24 Hours on Top of a Mountain. It was shot in 2019 and took place on the Grandfather Mountain, which has one of the state's most difficult trails. The hike is so dangerous, it has taken several people's lives. This premise was created by Weddle, who also directed the video. Their group had 11 people, who each helped carry their share of equipment. The next day, however, several left without taking anything with them. This left the 4 still up there, Jake, Garrett, Connor, and Dustin, with the duty of bringing it all down. They tried the best they could, but were unable to carry it all. This made the already difficult hike worse, with one incline proving too much. Dustin lost his footing and broke his ankle, no longer able to walk. They kept going without him as he called for help on his phone. When they got to the bottom, they found the others had already driven off. They also learned the hike was too difficult for emergency services. The only way to rescue him was via airlift.
So we had to call in an airlift to come in and scoop Dustin up and carry him and get him off the mountain.
This is the first detail that is way more crazy than it seems. It was discovered by the YouTuber BJ on her channel, That Surprise Witness. The YouTuber found 2 reports of a hiker being rescued by airlift from the mountain in 2019. Strangely, both involved a broken ankle and occurred within a 2-week time span. The first occurred on May 25th. They apparently found a regular rescue would have taken 7 hours, and required 50 people. This led them to use the NC Heart team for the first time in history. They called in the National Guard with footage of the entire ordeal. The second occurred on June 5th. This one is notable because reports note rescuers battled fog, which is consistent with the conditions seen in MrBeast's video. These efforts both utilized military helicopters, which means your tax dollars were used to save one of Jimmy's employees. That wasn't the end of their troubles though. Jake eventually got a text from James Warren, who he calls Cousin Jimmy. It turns out park officials found the trash, put 2 and 2 together, and contacted MrBeast LLC. The company allegedly deflected blame onto the 4 men left behind. This resulted in an investigation that ended up with Jake, Garrett, and Connor being sentenced to 24 hours of community service.
So they did an investigation, but then it came down to MrBeast LLC was able to deflect.
I lost the point.
The charges onto, what'd they call it? I can't think of the name. It's their, Rubber Duck LLC, which is their think tank that they use for video ideas. It got deflected to them, and then it was going to be me, Connor, Garrett, and Dustin were going to get charged, but me, Connor, and Garrett got together and said that we were going to take the blame and not have Dustin take anything because Dustin had broken his ankle. And I was like, he's already been through enough, realistically.
This is the most important detail, that they were able to deflect onto their think tank, Rubber Duck LLC. This entity has little to no public association with MrBeast, which is likely why Jake privated the video. BJ noticed this and dug further, finding clues about the aforementioned Cousin Jimmy. And this would lead to some of the most egregious claims against MrBeast yet. James Warren is a name that comes up a lot throughout this video. The so-called secret CEO of MrBeast has been alluded to in several of Dogpack's videos. With very little info about him online, it's going to be difficult to make this easy to digest. It's also going to veer into a lot of so far unproven allegations, so keep that in mind when we move forward. The next series of events occurred when BJ shared her follow-up investigation to the mountain incident a few days later, which set the foundation to what the public knows about this elusive figure. James Warren used to be a real estate agent, obtaining his license in 2005. That was shortly after graduating from business school. He first worked in residential investment before getting a unique role at one of Europe's largest IP law firms. He worked there until 2010 as a business development analyst. From 2014 to 2016, he served as a lead real estate agent at Next Home Team. It's unclear exactly when he was brought into MrBeast, but he began to fill in for a lot of Jimmy's responsibilities.
And is it true that you train somebody to essentially be you?
Oh, 100%.
And where is that person?
The CEO. He just runs like the hiring and basically, while I'm here just having fun, what is it, Monday? He's over there working.
How did you know he was the guy to be you? Because you are, I don't know if you're aware.
He's a lunatic.
We get a glimpse of his importance in the company's leaked production manual. Everything we do here is interconnected, and the more you understand about what others are doing and trying to accomplish, the better set up for success you will be. A good example of this is James Warren. He understands every single part of this company at a deep level and as a result can make decisions faster than anyone else. The stuff you will be reading about, he knows like the back of his hand. I've seen a team of 5 people work on a project for a week just to give up, and James solves it in 30 minutes. The first lead BJ found were public documents for the Rubber Duck Company. It was created in February of 2019, the same year as the military incident. The registered agent who received stuff like potential lawsuits was later changed to CT Corporation by Jimmy's mom. Meanwhile, the annual reports were signed by James. The company was in compliance until 2022 when it stopped filing annual reports. This led Rubber Duck Company to be dissolved administratively a year later. BJ's next lead came from Beast Philanthropy, whose legal entity is McCharity Inc. The nonprofit's filings show James Warren as a director on the board. It also confirms he is related to Jimmy, but not Sue. Through digging, BJ concluded he was related to Jimmy through his dad, being the son of Charles' sister Brenda Cherry Donaldson. Brenda, Jimmy's aunt, works for a company called Body Knoll Enterprises, which describes itself as a family-owned business. We own and operate 330 plus Hardee's restaurants across 4 states, and develop successful real estate projects. To be clear, they don't own Hardee's, they are franchisees. This is where things get interesting. It turns out there's a MrBeast video that heavily involves Hardee's, in which he goes through the same drive-thru 1,000 times. This raises a lot of questions, namely that it could be a potential conflict of interest. I want to stress, however, that this is still just pure speculation. Dawson shared this research while working on his highly anticipated 3rd video, which was posted on August 28th. It wasn't, however, the one he originally planned. As it turns out, he had trouble clearing some info and was going to wait until after MrBeast's response.
I do have sort of that bigger project, the original part 3, and I have a lot of other interviews and other allegations that I'm working on putting together, so I have something for when MrBeast responds.
There was so much interest at this point, traditional media started reaching out. That included the New York Times, Time Magazine, as well as a few documentary filmmakers. He started referring sources to these more legitimate outlets, as they had more resources and legal protections.
Also, traditional media is involved. They've been DMing me, New York Times, Time Magazine, also like documentary people. I don't know. You're like, hey, I've worked with Netflix and Hulu and Apple TV and Peacock. Are you interested? And I'm like, I don't know.
Now, this third video was more controversial for several reasons. It's way more off the cuff, and Dogpack doesn't really show much in the way of actual evidence. The majority of his claims are unsubstantiated beyond sources he can't reveal. There are even a few he doesn't seem to be fully sure of himself.
And I say allegedly because it turns out there's a lot of people in North Carolina named James Warren who assault their girlfriends, I guess. So I'm still having people look into these cases.
That being said, the video does bring up a lot of pertinent information. The first section focuses on James Warren, who'd begun deleting all of his accounts after being mentioned. Dawson states Warren was the former CEO of acquisitions for a real estate investment firm called Greenstone Ventures LLC. The company was owned and operated by a man named Joshua Hutchins. This is troubling as his former business partner was convicted of running a real estate Ponzi scheme from 2014 to 2018. He was sentenced to 10 years in prison in 2021. Warren is even mentioned in the court transcripts. Many said they only trusted Hutchins due to the recommendation of a very reputable and successful real estate attorney. This excerpt comes from an elderly woman named Sylvia. He represented Mr. Hutchins as highly competent and capable. He presented a successful track record in how Mr. Hutchins had delivered for other investments.
James Warren, the then realtor who recommended me to Hutchins, also encouraged us to work with Mr. Hutchins on trying to make it work, and we did until it became very evident as to his apparent intent of complete fraud.
Hutchins solicited investment money by telling victims it would be put to work on a specific property. However, he regularly used investor funds on other properties and personal expenses. That included an AR-15 and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. Reportedly, his wife also had a domestic violence order of protection against him. He called her a lying rat, and sent menacing photos of himself in tactical gear in the woods to her friends and family. The losses due to his fraud were devastating, with Sylvia likening it to financial rape. It destroyed her retirement account, losing a total of $1.3 million. Through my mother's very long Alzheimer's disease, I supported her financially. In the crash of 2008 and 2009, I lost my job and 2 years was unemployed. In 2014, I had a very severe cancer diagnosis. Was out of work for over a year. In spite of all that, I've lived very frugally and tried to make things work. I made him know all of my history and told him I could not take a risk. He and James Warren, the then realtor, stated, "Oh, real estate." It's worth emphasizing it can't be proven Warren was aware of the fraud taking place or willingly complicit. This is when Dogpack moves on to James' supposed best friend, LaKoya Hill. They both attended UNC Chapel Hill, and got into real estate after graduating. While Dawson claims otherwise, it's not clear they attended together. LaKoya's trajectory changed after his photography career of male models took off. By 2017, he was running an adult entertainment event business called LaKoya Hill Entertainment.
Party evolved into this place where, you have the drag queens, the muscle daddies, the bears, the twinks, the posh boys.
Then 2 years later, he was hired by MrBeast as a producer, even being spotted in videos. Dawson claimed to have heard from a number of sources that LaKoya was accused of sexual misconduct in late 2021. The details come from 6 different ex-employees he personally verified but kept anonymous. LaKoya is alleged to have made people very uncomfortable on shoots. He's even described by one as the old gay guy who likes to bang 18-year-old straight employees. They each referenced a story about his assistant, with one claiming the victim was paid $30,000 in severance. Dawson calls this first testimony especially credible, which provides specific details on the allegation. In 2021, he had an assistant named Redacted. I heard LaKoya acted very inappropriately with the victim, booking hotel rooms with only one bed, walking around in his underwear, having Redacted come to his house and showing him his sex toy collection. Just in general, LaKoya made the victim uncomfortable. Redacted started complaining to higher-ups, and a report got written. LaKoya was put on paid leave for like a month. The severity of these claims range from sexual harassment to straight-up sexual assault. Some even allege it wasn't an isolated incident. He essayed multiple people, apparently roofied multiple people as well. It's important to stress these inconsistencies, as each claim shouldn't be taken at face value.
I show one message where it's like, LaKoya Hill roofied multiple people. I'm like, I haven't heard that from anyone else, so potentially a rumor. So there's stuff like that where it's like, you know, could be true, could not be true. I'm not going to claim it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all alleged.
There's a lot of "I've heard" littered throughout this video, which is much weaker than, say, a first-hand witness. Now we have to look at what's actually corroborated between the different accounts.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like testimony. I'm just kind of a conduit for other people's testimony in that video, and then also like dealing with essay allegations. It's very difficult to prove them because usually there's just sort of the two witnesses, the perpetrator and the victim.
Yeah.
And
the overall takeaway is that some kind of incident likely happened. It may have been sexual harassment, it may have been even worse, and a report was filed as a result. LaKoya was supposedly fired after the report. However, he was actually moved to Unilingo, a dubbing company they worked with at the time. This can be proven with a profile showing his email at unilingo.tv. Here's another message from the especially credible source. MrBeast practically forced them to hire LaKoya. Then they poached Unilingo's employees and copied their whole business and created Creator Global. They apparently did this as part of their partnership while not informing Unilingo of his alleged misconduct. In fact, LaKoya was hired back to MrBeast in 2023 and even promoted to COO. To back this up, there is a Slack message showing him acting in some formal capacity. Dawson further claimed to have been personally introduced to him.
he was actually brought back to MrBeast in 2023 after sexually assaulting his assistant prior and promoted to Chief Financial Officer, which is how I personally was introduced to him.
He even plays a supposed voice memo from James Warren to Unilingo, where he asks them to process a curious $28,000 bonus.
But he had asked me and Jimmy personally, he's like, hey, you know, can I have a $28,000 bonus for work I did in the past? And I'm like, yeah, of course, man. And the reason for that is I had brought him up to my level, and I don't take bonuses. So for like 2 years, he didn't get any bonuses when our guys were getting like crazy percentage bonuses. I need a favor. Sue cannot process this bonus through Beast. I need a solid. Can you please process a $28K bonus for LaKoya? Let me know. Bye.
Interestingly, MrBeast's leaked memo revealed they had a new president and COO. This implied they finally let the adult entertainer go, but it wasn't long until Dawson found a new LinkedIn account indicating otherwise. LaKoya was seemingly made president of Creator Global, their competitor to Unilingo.
And then they used LaKoya to try to steal Unilingo's business, poach their employees, take their clients, and then MrBeast launched Creator Global, where LaKoya Hill is currently listed as the president. So that's LaKoya Hill.
If anything's to be learned from these two allegations, it's this. 1, in bad faith, MrBeast sent a mole to a company they were partnered with just to take them down and rip off their business. While maybe not illegal, it does seem highly unethical from how it's described. And secondly, if everything that was told was true, it appears that MrBeast was bouncing around an alleged abuser. But while people were becoming more skeptical of MrBeast, they also started becoming more critical of the people that were calling him out. Before we go any further with MrBeast allegations, we should probably discuss the problems people had with Dogpack's video. His most recent upload covering James had many claims about his character that aren't elaborated on. That's while trying to protect himself by throwing around the word allegedly over and over again.
James Warren, also allegedly an ex-drug addict. I've heard that he offered cocaine and hookers to editors to stay late. And then the really big thing is that there was some incident between him and a female colleague that resulted in the female colleague leaving the company and receiving 3 years in severance pay. But from what I've heard of James Warren's character, how he's hit ex-girlfriends, not let them leave the house, beat his dog, defrauded people in his own ways.
The idea that saying allegedly will protect him from legal consequences entirely is misguided, to say the least, especially since a lot of these claims were originating with his video. There is defamation by implication, as well as facets like reckless disregard for the truth. If even one of these is untrue, it would be a huge blow to his credibility on top of the already massive legal risks he's facing. The most egregious example of this is when Dawson alleges James Warren had domestic violence charges filed against him.
I heard that he's very aggressive. I've heard him referred to as a psychopath who screams at people and hits his girlfriends.
Now he says that the YouTuber BJ helped him look into these potential charges. That made it strange when she came out and said she told him there wasn't enough evidence for him to include it.
Suffice it to say that I do not think that the case number that is associated with this picture right here, and I told Dawson this, and that's why he said this in the video, I do not think that this particular case is the same James Warren.
This brought a ton of criticism, with some calling it the worst MrBeast exposed video ever made. It once again makes you wonder how much he's actually consulting lawyers behind the scenes. And it's such a shame considering how much research and editing was put into his first 2 uploads. Dawson responded by admitting he phrased things poorly. He then clarified he apparently found 6 other criminal cases under the correct James Warren, but he was still unclear on their actual charges. He then elaborated on the circumstances. In the case of James, I have multiple people claiming to have witnessed domestic violence firsthand. I should have clarified the whole charges things better, but I'm very confident that some documented report exists on that. Multiple former employees told me there were domestic violence charges filed by James's ex-girlfriend. It was later proven that none of these 6 cases were for domestic violence. Dawson was forced to issue a retraction, admitting he should have waited before stating it in the video. That meant if he had just waited an extra week to release this video, none of this would have happened. The result is now a huge disservice to those who trusted him with their stories. I mean, why are we supposed to take his word for it that any of the other sources he has are especially credible? It's also a massive legal liability for him. Now, this is just my own bit of speculation, but I think he was banking on MrBeast wanting to avoid discovery. The last thing MrBeast wants to do is be part of a deposition. There's also a lot of things like hiring Delaware despite his past that they would not want to say under oath. However, that doesn't mean they have to sue him for every single claim. MrBeast could easily pick and choose which allegations to litigate. The fact he decided to go forward despite knowing he'd get the answer soon is not doing him any favors. In the rest of Dawson's 3rd video, he talks about the internal culture of MrBeast, which has often been called a boys' club. One ex-employee describes what it was apparently like from a female perspective. On my very first day, I was told to avoid being alone in a room with certain people in positions of power. Once a male coworker asked me what I would do if Jimmy sexually assaulted or harassed me. They scream and hit walls when they get upset. The minute any woman leaves a room, they talk about if/how they would f*** her. I've heard men comment on female contestants' bodies many times. Not everyone behaves this way, but no one openly speaks out against it in fear of losing their job. You can't take anything to HR because Jimmy's mom runs it. The next testimony is from Jess, who previously accused Kris Tyson of sexual assault. I have heard multiple stories of Jimmy being directly informed of sexual assault happening at the company and proactively working to keep it quiet. Kris told Jimmy about a time she was sexually assaulted by another talent member on a private jet. And talent members/employees making advances towards contestants was a regular occurrence. Dawson does a terrible job at substantiating this though, relying on clips of MrBeast clearly joking around. He has since gone on the record stating he isn't sure if Jimmy is a misogynist or just socially awkward. He also defends Jimmy's ex-girlfriend, Maddie, who slighted him in light of the scandals. This proved ironic when Dawson had to admit he was wrong about the criminal charges. The tweet contains a text message where his source calls her a wine-drunk gossip. It then blames her for being the source of that original rumor. Finally, Dawson points out their new COO previously worked at SoftBank Vision Fund. This company made headlines for the nasty macho culture shaped by their executives. He's even named in some of the articles discussing it.
So yeah, maybe I don't see the vision with hiring this guy as the new president.
That's where his third video ends, and while it hasn't reached the same heights as his last two for obvious reasons, it has still garnered over 3 million views. Around the same time, he also did an interview with Oompaville. It included an exclusive piece of information which he again provides no evidence for.
I'll give you an exclusive. Somebody texted me saying that the head of security is Jimmy's stepdad and he likes to pull knives on people as a joke.
It seems Dawson's work was just about finished, as he was ready to hand over the torch to traditional media.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for him to respond. I mean, I'm happy to just sit and watch from the sidelines now. Let the big dogs take over. New York Times, Time Magazine, those type of people.
If what he's claiming is true, this might just be the beginning of the story as it goes mainstream. It's probably not a coincidence that right after, Rosanna appeared on NBC for a sit-down interview about the various scandals circling the Beast Games. She currently alleges to have spoken to over 200 contestants and about 20 ex-employees. The segment also has a statement from MrBeast's spokesperson that deflects to his philanthropy.
The spokesperson also added that Jimmy Donaldson has been very philanthropic over the course of his career, including giving more than $5 million in supplies to Ukrainian refugees. They also talked about how he powered a rural Zambian village with solar energy.
Shortly after, Keemstar revealed Jimmy was going to respond later that week. It was publicized in a really bizarre video that I don't think uses AI, but comes across like it does.
MrBeast is fighting back. On Snapchat, Keemstar revealed he spoke with MrBeast, confirming that the response video is dropping this week.
This didn't end up happening, with Jimmy instead uploading a regular channel video that doesn't even discuss the controversies. With the spectacle persisting for over 3 months and counting, it seems there were hundreds of skeletons just waiting to burst out of the closet. It's gotten to the point people began digging through his past to relitigate everything. The first thing to bubble to the surface is the fact that Jimmy was arrested back in 2018. With his channel taking off, the 19-year-old bought an expensive sports car, the BMW i8. It was shown off in a now-deleted video. Jimmy was stopped alongside 2 others after a high-speed drag race in which they traveled 122 miles per hour. He was charged with speeding, reckless driving, and a speed competition. He was placed in the Edgecombe County Detention Center under a $100,000 bond. It's not entirely clear what happened next, but given this was a first offense, it probably wasn't treated like that big of a deal. Kris had this to say about it on his Reddit in 2019. Don't make claims money was involved without knowing. He was 18 with a supercar. Of course, if someone revs up to you on the interstate, you're gonna race them. He made a mistake, but he paid for it, sold the car, and moved on. While most assumed that all of Jimmy's shady practices were the result of his wealth, they were surprised to learn that that may not actually be the case. All the way back in 2017, a YouTuber named Iox alleged MrBeast was profiting off a channel running giveaways. The video centers around an account called Clash Hub, which did a continuous giveaway livestream. It was a complete sham using pre-recorded footage lifted from Jimmy's second channel. While this meant there was plausible deniability, he pointed out the scammer used the same referral link MrBeast had for a sponsor.
Now, if you wanted to rip someone's fake stream footage and use it as your own, you would replace it with the referral code with yours so you could take the money. But why didn't Clash Hub change the referral code of Free My App so he could make money and not have all the money go to MrBeast?
It doesn't seem like Jimmy responded to this, although one of his future collaborators, JSlat, praised the video. After all the most recent backlash, a new detractor community was created called MrBeast Snark, which dug through Jimmy's past on Reddit. They uncovered an old account which revealed his past in cryptocurrency. MrBeast got into crypto in February of 2017 and self-admittedly began gambling. This led him to lose well over 15K. Guys, don't gamble. The pain isn't worth it. I've lost tens of thousands of dollars gambling cryptos and I regret it. Started as little money just for fun and very fast spiraled out of control. After this, he would end up buying an entire warehouse just to mine crypto. I bought a warehouse and I'm running a crypto mining company. I run a cryptocurrency mining company and I've already made 6 figures off those coins. I don't know what you mean by seems all you want to do is get rich quick. I genuinely love cryptocurrencies. I think they will change the world over the next decade. This previously untalked about venture was speculated to be a hidden source of his early wealth. The company was called MrBeast Crypto LLC, but it has long since been dissolved. In April of 2021, a project called Refinable launched using MrBeast's name and likeness. It was marketed as a major NFT marketplace. While it's unclear if he ever promoted it, he apparently followed the account. It was sold as a token called Fine, which fluctuated wildly and dropped by $6. This cost backers so much money it was accused of being a pump and dump scheme. The project launched on April 27th of that year, and Jimmy unfollowed the very next day. It's unclear if he has ever acknowledged his involvement with the project. I highly doubt that MrBeast intentionally tried to screw people over, but he's still involved here. As an influencer, he should understand that him telling people to invest in crypto can have very bad outcomes. Another story often talked about in the subreddit is that of the Creator League, a gaming competition run by eFuse where 8 creators led teams to compete for prizes. In 2023, they offered $20 passes that allowed fans to get involved and even join a team's roster. While MrBeast wasn't on said roster, he did promote it in a video promising a free chocolate bar to viewers who bought in.
When you purchase a Creator League pass, you're able to influence the league, compete in weekly tournaments, win prizes, and potentially even meet some of your favorite influencers. And if you sign up in the next 7 days, you'll receive a free box of Feastables bars.
That became a huge controversy when it was revealed the community passes were NFTs. It was only found mentioned in their refund policy. This led many, including some of the creators involved, to feel misled. It was a huge deal considering a number of them had held strong stances against NFTs. The event was subsequently postponed and eFuse laid off 30% of their staff. They also offered refunds to those uncomfortable with blockchain technology. There have been no further updates to this very day. The last thing I want to mention in this section is from Logan Paul's podcast, where he and Jimmy talked about the NFT collection CryptoPunks. They both describe a phone call they got from Gary Vee, who is often credited with starting the NFT craze in 2021.
Gary Vee, it's like 11 p.m. just out of nowhere, just calls me and he's like, yo, I got like 30 people to call, hop in. I'm like, I don't care. He's like, it'll be the best decision of your life, just get in. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And so I just joined the call and I just see like Logan and I don't even know these other people. I don't want to put them on blast.
Every heavy hitter you can imagine who's worth $1 billion was on this one call.
So there's like all these like very successful people in this call. And Gary's just like, everyone shut the f up. Here's what you're going to do, and you're going to do it right now. You're all going to buy a bunch of CryptoPunks. And we're all just like, he's like, who here owns one? And like one guy raised his hand, and it's because Gary bullied him into buying it the day before. And we're all just like, are you sure, Gary? And we're asking questions, and he's like, just buy it. I was just so pulled by his like conviction that I bought a bunch.
Jimmy would end up buying 8 CryptoPunks, which he sold for 20 to 30 times their value.
When Gary does that call with all these billionaires and 8 months or a year later, everybody's like, Gary was right again.
Yeah.
Is it possible that he's right because of the call? Do you know what I'm saying?
I think about that a lot.
Like, dude, he has all these billionaire market makers in the thing. He makes the call, makes the market. By the way, you look around at all the punk owners a year later and you're like, damn, it's all the same motherfuckers that were on the call.
Before there was any controversy, I remember listening to this exact podcast when it first came out and thinking to myself, this sounds like market manipulation. It doesn't bode well, especially given Logan is now in his own controversies for his involvement in multiple alleged crypto scams. The latest development is that MrBeast may have returned to his roots of crypto gambling, with a video surfacing of him playing on the site Bust-A-Bit, which is illegal everywhere in the United States. After his dubious third video, Dawson began losing public favor at a rapid pace, and along with this, more people online started to make fun of Jake Weddle for being unfunny. He's pretty much lost all of his credibility after agreeing to take Jimmy's money. The struggling comedian couldn't handle this heckling, responding to all the mean comments. Where is the funny? Think harder, it's there if you're not brain rot. Your 15 minutes are almost up. Bin up, this dude's a grifter. Both of you are hateful and stupid. It seemingly got too much for Weddle as he began lashing out on Instagram. My mental health is at an all-time low and it's because you idiot hateful, and I can't stress this enough, dumber than dirt trolls. Go up to a rape victim and tell them it's their fault next. Oh wait, that's exactly what Jimmy's fans do to the numerous allegations coming out from employees, contestants, you name it. Needless to say, him comparing himself getting made fun of to rape victims didn't go well at all. And somehow it gets worse though, as he then demanded Jimmy to make a statement disavowing those damn dirty trolls. Jimmy needs to make a public statement calling off everyone harassing whistleblowers and survivors. Calling off Keem. Send me a cease and desist. Take me to court. I dare you. Let's get the solitary footage public. Let's get it on record. Let's get the police involved. Let's audit the MrBeast company and the shell companies. Alright, I'm done. Don't f***ing poke the bear again. I will f***ing burn it all down and it will be easy. He has since vowed to leave the internet, although whether or not he sticks to that remains to be seen. With the LaCoya Hill drama now at the forefront of the detractor discourse, an editor named Trey Yates stepped forward with his own story involving the man. Trey worked at MrBeast from 2018 to 2021, now editing for Jacksepticeye. He first spoke out in July, having once been close friends with Kris Tyson. He explains that in 2021, they shot a video where the cast was hunted by a former FBI agent. The final upload was apparently their second attempt, with the first nearly resulting in Kris's death. I am so anti-Team LaCoya right now. Kris is so overwhelmed and tired from almost over the weekend from the FBI agent that he let me know he's not feeling like recording. The FBI agent was not vetted properly, but LaCoya is not taking responsibility for it. The first FBI agent they had hit Kris's car from behind with Kris, Carl, and Nolan in it. He drove them off the road and they crashed. After they parted ways with the guy, he said the experience gave him PTSD from when he was in Afghanistan in 2003. Before filming, he was talking about how being at war in Afghanistan was actually fun though, so yeah. Not sure if it's an excuse or real. I'm not sure either, but there's footage of him driving the Talon off the road. LaCoya is not answering anyone at all. He knows he f***ed up massively. As stated time and time again though, as with all the info we've covered, these are so far just allegations. On September 9th, Trey was interviewed by a channel called The Asher Show. He went in depth about his time at MrBeast, before making serious claims against the company. Trey explains he started editing for their second channels before being promoted and offered to move out to North Carolina. He was eventually asked to head a subsidiary company called Horizontal Productions. If we are to take him at his word, he was effectively working 4 full-time jobs. Trey worked under James Warren and alleged he believed he could read Jimmy's mind. He then accused the man of offering substances to employees to help them work longer. This is substantiated with messages that show a higher-up named Devin Leach acknowledging a superhuman Adderall task force. The chat includes an account named John Smith, who is alleged to be Jimmy. To prove this, he shares a message from John sharing Jimmy's WikiFeet page. My feet are a 4.8 out of 5. The Adderall incident was apparently subject to an internal investigation, although it didn't seem to go anywhere.
This whole thing lasted like a week. I remember James Warren had to be pulled out of the company's story for like a week, and then the next week he was right back in.
Trey reiterated the accusations that LaCoya Hill was fired because of sexual assault, calling it a rampant problem at the company.
And there's so much behind the scenes with sexual assault, with rape, and with abusing employees. He's guilty of all of those.
He provides insight to what happened behind the scenes, alleging it occurred in 2021 and was portrayed as a family leave.
It was announced in the company that LaCoya was taking a family leave, and that family leave occurred for a month. And then someone messaged me, and I don't remember if it was Ava, I don't remember if it was Carl or someone, but someone messaged me and they gave me the tip of, hey, LaCoya's not been on family leave for a month. He got caught sexually assaulting his assistant.
Trey was laid off later that year, explaining it began after he moved back to Texas. He wanted to work remotely and expressed an unwillingness to do 45-hour-plus work weeks anymore.
And it was just like, yeah, after that call, that lead called me, and he was just like, sorry, we gotta let you go.
This, of course, is just his side of events. However, he is the first on record to affirm some of the most serious accusations in Dogpack's video. That week, Dawson appeared in a video on Rosanna Pansino's channel where they made Oreo desserts together. BJ also made a vlog with Jake Weddle where they tried to make the MrBeast burger. It seems the detractors have all become close friends, bonding over how much they hated Jimmy. This may have been to the detriment of their public image though, as Dogpack in particular was brought under further scrutiny. Following his video about MrBeast's secret CEO, Dogpack got a lot of backlash from the commentary community. The most outspoken was Nicholas Diorio, who felt his handling of the information was grossly irresponsible. That was made clear once it was definitively proven James Warren was not charged with domestic violence. Nick argued it was so egregious he should just take down the entire video. They would end up talking in private, which was leaked a few weeks later. These messages start off rough with a back and forth about his initial mistake. Dawson is then pressed on the claim LaKoya roofied multiple people. He previously admitted it was an unproven rumor. However, he now claimed that there was corroborating testimony. This is followed by a message alleging LaKoya abused children and paid them to stay silent. It's not clear if this is meant to substantiate the roofie claim, or show an example of something he wouldn't publish. I downplay the whole LaKoya thing in my video. If anything, I make it seem like there's only one victim. Yeah, I don't believe it, so I didn't post it. When asked why he believed LaKoya had multiple victims, he said this: I think it's around 70% likely in my opinion. I know he has multiple victims, I don't know about rape. He wasn't fired from MrBeast because of my video, there was another incident. James Warren being abusive and LaKoya sexually assaulting people are both corroborated by 15 plus people. Dawson explains how many of these people spoke to him off the record, so he couldn't use their testimony. It was difficult because many still worked at MrBeast and others were actively getting severance. He admitted public perception had justifiably turned against him, so he was now citing victims to an unnamed documentary crew. If it goes to court, people can testify under a subpoena without losing severance, otherwise the evidence will come out when the documentary comes out. Dawson then offers to tell Nick something off the record, only for Nick to remind him he was a stranger, to which he immediately retracted the offer. The day before this leak, Dogpack did an interview with The Asher Show. He was asked about the possibility of being fed false info by MrBeast's team to discredit him. This led him to discuss a strange account called Linda Smith.
This person actually had insider information. This wasn't just like a complete troll account, which I later found out. They started messaging me about the LaKoya stuff, saying that it was consensual. And what I found out from other people is that when they did the internal investigation at MrBeast, they determined it was consensual. But like I said in my video, if they wanted to go that route, I would have new evidence to say that it wasn't consensual.
He further alleged they tried to pay LaKoya's accuser hush money to say it was consensual. To prove this, he shared an excerpt of a phone call he had with the victim. The recording is heavily distorted, but Asher claims to have verified their identity and employment at MrBeast. It's corroborated by an anonymous source stating the victim was drugged during the incident. They go on to discuss James Warren, where he reiterates many of his claims.
There's certainly rumors of him doing abusive things with his domestic partners. I mean, his girlfriend's like half his age. He apparently keeps her on a monthly allowance.
He then alleges Jimmy, quote, throws his phone at people and gives them 2-year severance. The final information he shares is why he believes LaKoya had multiple victims.
The reason he got moved recently from MrBeast to become the president of Creator Global was not because my video came out. It was because there was another incident.
Most recently, in another video on Rosanna's channel, Dogpack claimed MrBeast used CGI in his Philanthropy videos.
But if you don't see the CGI at home, I'll point it out. This is the before shot of the hospital. This is the after shot, and then same thing over here. What I noticed is that Dan Mace, who's the director on Beast Philanthropy, did a behind the scenes video for this shoot where they build a hospital in Nepal or whatever.
Started off by getting the opening shots. I like to call these plinky plonk match cuts. These are great for
this. The building looks very different than in shots like this.
Even with all of this new drama, a school year was starting for lunch-eating children. So despite the outrage, Jimmy bit the bullet and launched a competitor to Lunchables with KSI and Logan Paul called Lunchlies. It's been marketed as a healthier alternative, antagonizing their rivals in a similar vein to how they fought Hershey's. It was announced a day before the Beast Games lawsuit went public, which already left a bad taste in people's mouths. However, online users were quick to criticize both his choice of business partners and the product itself. Most notable was from legacy Minecraft YouTuber DanTDM. What happened to YouTubers, man? I can't not say anything anymore. This is selling stuff for the sake of making money. Simple. How does this benefit their fans? This is selling crap to kids who don't know better than to trust the people who are selling it to them. Do better. KSI fired back directly. He called Dan a hypocrite for selling merchandise. KSI was then community noted for selling the exact same type of toy he used to say Dan sold crap. Logan Paul fought with random Twitter users, only to get community noted several times himself. That included one pointing out that lead was found in Prime Hydration 3 separate times. The most curious, however, was MrBeast, who made his first public tweet since July. He again tried to frame their product from a virtuous, better-for-you angle. Obviously, eating fresh chicken and broccoli is healthier, but if someone is going to eat a pre-made meal like this, which millions of people do through Lunchables, then I think giving them a higher quality version at roughly the same price is a net good in my opinion, and why we launched Lunchly. This didn't really resonate with people because even if he was right, that really isn't a high bar to cross. Even if you made a cigarette that was 25% healthier than the competition, at the end of the day you're still selling a cigarette. The response may have gone better a year ago, but at this point, with all the scandals surrounding his ventures, it was hard to buy Jimmy's noble, altruistic framing. He was ratioed 3 times over by tweets pointing out he had yet to address any of the serious scandals against him. Many stood by DanTDM, including Jacksepticeye, who said this: "You mess with DanTDM, you mess with YouTube." The team behind this venture sent samples of Lunchlies to several online figures, including drag performer Plain Jane. Jane was excited at first, only to be informed of all the controversy by her fans. This led the drag queen to disavow MrBeast and throw the pre-packaged meal in the trash.
Okay, I was not privy to MrBeast's transgressions against humanity, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna toss these right in the garbage. F you, MrBeast. F you.
While this was all happening, the many scandals surrounding MrBeast went so mainstream that pretty much every single publication was covering it, including BBC, CNN, NBC, and ABC. Some of these news reports even included clips from one of Dogpack's videos. For his part, Jimmy handled this ordeal a lot better than his business partner KSI. He decided to make several videos, tweets, and even a website to show he wasn't upset about the backlash. He also freaked out when people didn't like the release of his new rap song.
Where's the audio? Oh my god.
I'm sure you've probably noticed by now, but Keemstar has appeared a lot throughout this story. He's been the source of a lot of information from MrBeast's camp, including the email some suspect was leaked on purpose. He clearly speaks to Jimmy behind the scenes. This has led to accusations of being paid off. Keem fought with many of his critics, stating Dawson had less credibility than Boogie2988, a man that faked cancer. The two argued on Twitter, resulting in this video predicting Dogpack's fate.
So you're going to be under the microscope now. More and more people are going to turn on you. Eventually, MrBeast is going to make a clapback response. And then they're going to pretty much come to the conclusion that 30% of the stuff that you've put forth is accurate, 70% is bullshit, and then you won't have any credibility moving forward.
Keem was there to laugh when Dawson was forced to issue a retraction. On September 27, 2024, Keem embarked with Boogie and Wings on a lolcow live camping trip. It was shockingly sponsored by Feastables, with an entire vending machine unveiled on day 2.
Your prize, brought to you by the biggest YouTuber on the planet, What, Jordy? Drum roll, please.
He's bad.
Oh, what the? What the? Holy sh!
I can't overstate how crazy it is that Feastables, a brand marketed towards children, was also sponsoring this show. With the month prior, Boogie getting a tattoo of the word liar on his face because he faked having cancer. This occurred at the same time an online comedian named Scumbag Dad claimed Jimmy was paying off critics.
MrBeast had expressed disappointment with the podcast, and due to political and business reasons, the podcast was taken down.
Even if no one's getting paid off, it does seem likely that people just don't want to piss off MrBeast so they could stay in his good graces. Because even with all this drama, he is still the biggest YouTuber of all time after all. With that, we've reached the end of the MrBeast story so far. What started as a few blemishes on his otherwise untarnished public image began to unravel an endless amount of skeletons just waiting in the closet. Because of the sheer amount of information, it's now impossible to keep track of everything, and the focus has long since been lost. But as I was making this video, Jimmy did finally respond. After 4 months and what feels like hundreds of controversies, the YouTuber finally issued his first response since denouncing Ava Kris Tyson back in July. This statement, released on November 1st, shared the conclusion of the company's internal 3-month investigation. The law firm/investigators reviewed millions of documents/messages and conducted 39 interviews. I was asked to refrain from making public statements to enable a detailed and unbiased investigation. Below are their conclusions. This was accompanied by a document from Quinn Emanuel who outlined certain key findings and conclusions. However, they did so without waiving attorney-client privilege and work product protection. The first of these bullet points address claims of pedophilia, grooming, and CP. Allegations of sexual misconduct between company employees and minors are without basis. The allegations were soundly rejected, including by the victim. This was followed by a statement from LavaGS, who elaborated on his perspective. The private investigators reviewed all of my DMs and interactions with Kris. I was the one who sent the Discord leaks to the investigators as they were coming out. I was not groomed. These were false allegations made up by other people with my name thrown in them. While it's true Lava still rejects these accusations, their statement seems to ignore claims made by Nathan and other minors in Kris's old Discord server. Now, it's possible what happened doesn't fall under their definition of sexual misconduct, but the evidence still shows inappropriate conduct in which minors were frequently exposed to adult content, including Shadman and other lolicon artists. The next bullet point reads as follows. Allegations of the company knowingly employing individuals with proclivities or histories towards illegal or questionable legal conduct are similarly without basis. Here too, the allegations were uniformly rejected. This statement implies Jimmy and the MrBeast company were unaware of Delaware's criminal record before employing him. If true, that shows serious neglect in their hiring process. That being said, it's worth emphasizing these allegations were not uniformly rejected. Delaware's own brother-in-law has said that Jimmy knew, describing a meeting they had with the registered sex offender about his conviction. Before being hired, Delaware sat down with Jimmy and Sue, Jimmy's mom, and explained to them everything. So yes, Jimmy knew. But again, this incident happened in 2010. Delaware was hired in 2017/2018. It also glosses over the fact Delaware and Kris had been friends since 2010, and Kris was the first to publicly reveal his criminal record. While on the subject, Kris was still employed despite publicly supporting Shadman, going so far as to buy a lolicon print, and frequently making jokes sexualizing an actual 14-year-old girl. Finally, we get to the last conclusion set forth by their investigation. Several isolated instances of workplace harassment and misconduct were identified during the investigation. The company was informed of such conduct and took swift and appropriate actions to address the incidents, including, where necessary, disciplining or letting go of implicated individuals. This at the very least shows action was taken towards some of the employees accused, although it's unclear who exactly it's in reference to. They're basically admitting to some of the accusations but not telling us which ones. The document concludes by outlining several steps they'd be taking to remedy its previous issues, including a, quote, anonymous reporting mechanism which didn't exist prior. With how vague and ultimately unsatisfactory the statement was overall, it unsurprisingly got a lot of backlash. Despite claiming a thorough investigation of all public and private accusations, it failed to specifically answer any of them. It doesn't talk about the crypto scandals, sketchy business ventures, his chocolate's potential use of child slaves, the fake lotteries, giving his editors drugs to hit deadlines, etc., etc., etc. As time goes on, it seems increasingly unlikely that a comprehensive rebuttal to all 3 hours of the controversy listed in this video will ever be detailed. In fact, I don't even know if it would be possible. It's hard to imagine what he could actually say as new accusations come out every week, because unless he somehow addressed everything, no one would be happy with his statement. That's without the fact that acknowledging all of this stuff would only serve to bring more eyes and attention to the disastrous fallout. The smartest move for Jimmy here from a PR perspective is probably just to keep doing what he's doing now. He released his statement and now he can move on. With how massive his channel is, it's hard to figure out how much this is actually hurting him. For what it's worth, there's some indication his growth has marginally slowed down. There's also the high likelihood that this severely negatively impacted his relationship with Amazon. But in a lot of respects, he also just seems too big to fail. Jimmy sought to become the biggest YouTuber in the world, and now that he's accomplished it, it's impossible to know what's going to happen next. Everything going on here is at a level we have never seen the likes of before in the history of the internet. It's perhaps that he's not too big to fail, but that he's too good at what he does to be dispensable. I find it so humorous that the major fallout started to occur after Jimmy became so high off his increasing power that he actually thought if he ran for president as an enlightened centrist, he'd win. I can't help but think he flew too close to the sun with that tweet, leading to the world collectively wanting to knock him down a peg. To be fair to MrBeast, there's a problem where every controversy is somewhat treated with the same level of importance. I'd say the most damning claims are those involving the often toxic ways his company operates behind the scenes. It is a fact that MrBeast hired a registered sex offender convicted of a crime against a child. There's a lot pointing to the idea they knowingly hired and even promoted LaKoya Hill after he was accused of sexual misconduct. It's a fact that Kris Tyson actively consumed lolly artwork, and frequently made jokes sexualizing actual minors. The company seems to have a toxic internal culture, and until recently a severely inadequate HR department. These are all serious matters when we consider the fact that MrBeast is, by and large, mostly watched by children. That's on top of all the questionable business practices and alleged mismanagement from his Amazon show to even his ventures with other creators. It all serves to undermine the once pristine image of YouTube's golden boy. And while viewers are probably fatigued about hearing about it at this point, it doesn't seem like there's an end in sight to the constantly ongoing scandals.